I haven't played this one in forever.
Oh no, what happened? Oh, crap, my camera got disconnected.
No.
Nice. Actually, I'm gonna open up while you're like fixing everything up. I'm gonna go open you up on YouTube maybe and just put you on mute just so I can see what the chat's doing and stuff like that.
Come on, Kevin.
Where in the world is Kevin? Kevin!
Diddle-diddle-diddle-doo.
Yeah, we are live, just so you guys know.
Oh
Cool.
no. Okay.
Yeah. It's cool.
I would have stopped playing probably.
No, we're live. All right, we can actually start going then. We'll wait until Arco gets here, but we can just start chatting. Just because we said we'd be live at 6, so we're live. Hello, Cody.
What's up?
Welcome to the clean room.
Here we are. Got my delicious spindrift with real grapefruit.
Very cool. I have my water.
Yeah,
I
water's
also have
good,
my water.
but it's not as good as
So
spindrift.
what are we gonna do to Kevin when he comes in?
Haze him.
Yeah, how are we
Yeah, I
gonna
was
haze
thinking
him?
we hate him.
How are we gonna haze him?
Why don't we tell him that that everything's we're already done. We finished without him.
Everything's all complete.
Yeah, he got the wrong time zone or something.
Oh no.
It's
Sounds like a
actually
nightmare.
possible that he did because he's on the West Coast, I think. So has anybody messaged him?
We said I had him in the ats. I added all you gentlemen. Added. Tomorrow, 6 Eastern.
Yeah, I mean we need to have
Yeah.
a rule of like you have to get here like at least 45 minutes before.
Jesus.
It takes a long time to get set up.
45 minutes?
Yeah, at least.
Jimmy's a slowpoke. Look at that fucking hair, Cody.
Thanks. Yeah, it's the nice lighting from the window.
Wow, that is nice lighting. You look like a Pantene commercial.
Oh, thanks. I use swap, so
Swap.
I'd be down for a swap. You can see some of my gray hairs. Is that a little gray boy?
Oh no.
Oh, in the light, I can actually see that one Lone Ranger.
Yeah. There's a couple Rangers. I think. Yep.
Jimmy, I thought you were kidding about telling me to keep playing and you just faded in.
No.
No, but I feel bad because I was just messing around, like not sounding that good. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, you're good. It's good. Let's see if we can
Thanks, boss.
ping Kevin.
Yeah. While you're figuring that out, how are you guys doing today? I know we drift. Jimmy, how you feeling?
I'm all right. I feel physically unfit recently because I've just everything has been thrown in the air. Have not been too much stuff going on.
Yeah.
Are there any like Breonna Taylor videos to watch? Like, did cops have cameras on or something?
Who said
I
that?
don't know.
Oh shit! Why did it do that?
Shows moments after. Yeah, I don't care about after. I need before.
You're gonna get people to turn off the Music Theory podcast before it even starts.
Yeah, for real.
But I'm waiting for Arco, and it's like, hey, anyone hear about Breonna Taylor? Like, shit. Chris, we talked about this.
Should we? I mean, if we're 5 minutes into it, should we just get started?
I think maybe we should, cause
Yeah, I don't mind that.
I don't think.
Okay.
Did you stop streaming?
No, we're still streaming.
No, I mean I don't see the I don't see your screen being shared or whatever.
Oh, my bad.
It's definitely still looks regular on YouTube. Is there a way that once this goes up, you can? Is there a way for you to
Cool.
What was I gonna say? Is there a way for you to like cut out the first 5 or so minutes of us like figuring this out, and then for like when it actually gets uploaded? Or
I think there is. Yeah. Yeah. It's no
Should I
worries
me-
though.
should I
It's no
message
worries. There's
Arca?
somebody there's 5 people watching right now. So I think we probably should just start.
no, I understand, but for people going back, but okay.
No,
for
no,
the
I got
5
it. I'm
people
just
who-
gonna send out a message in the IDW clean room for Kevin. Ooh, where did he go? There he is. But hop in when you're here. Okay. Okay. You guys ready? I rewound it a little bit to just because the next section sort of skips off of the last one, so I figured it would be good to watch the very end of the last one. It's
Cool.
There's not much, so let me see. Okay. So I'm just gonna hit play.
Oh,
Oh,
All right.
Is he here?
it's
No,
someone
that's
else,
someone
I think.
All right, I guess I should do the little intro then. Welcome to the IDW Clean Room, controlled environment for uncontrolled conversations, and we're doing part 2 of Adam Neely's Music Theory and White Supremacy, although it was originally Music Theory is White Supremacy. And
Music theory is racist. It was called.
Oh, is racist. Sorry.
Mhm.
So I've titled mine Music Theory is White Supremacy. So there, got all 3.
Gotcha.
So yeah, we thought we could do it in one. Last time it took a really long time because we stopped like literally every 15 seconds. And so we are hoping to finish today. Looks like we got like 2/3 of the way through, so we should be able to finish today. Kevin, if you get here, just hop in the Discord and start participating. Okay, I'm going to hit play. Let's see. Okay, here we go.
Much to my disappointment, there are still people in music theory, I wouldn't say who are white supremacist
Jimmy.
adjacent.
Yep.
May I ask one
They
thing?
still believe
Could
it.
you,
They know they can't
Well,
say
one
it.
is no sound. Two, could you scoot the mini Cody? Could you scoot him up a little bit so I can see the timestamp on the video as we go? If that's not a big deal.
I'd rather not, if that's okay. You're not going to be
No
able to
problem.
anyway because I can't keep it hovered. I can't keep that thing up.
All right, don't worry, we'll figure it out. It's okay.
All right, ready?
Go ahead, boss.
Very often see articles where Western music theory is framed as a tool for proving a piece of music's worth.
Yeah, there's no sound.
That piece that we checked out at
You're
the
not getting
beginning about
sound?
Lady Gaga argues for Lady
I don't
Gaga's
hear any sound.
genius using music theory and uses the stylistic practice of white
Okay, hold on.
Europeans as evidence of genius.
That's not good. You should be getting sound. If you're not getting sound... Oh, I know why. Hold on. You might... Hopefully there's sound. If somebody's in the chat, could you let me know if the sound is getting to the YouTube video?
Oh, it is getting to the YouTube video.
It is. It should be
It's just
getting
not
into
going to
here
Discord.
too. It's not. You're not getting it?
No.
That's strange. All right, let me try this.
Like the raised leading tone.
Do you have to do like a separate stream thing?
Are you getting it when I press play? This is why you guys have to come like 45 minutes early, just so you know.
Often see articles where Western
I
music
can't
theory is
test this
framed
alone.
as a
I mean, I was gonna break your balls and be like, well, we're not the one that's not having our sound come through, but
I can't test it on your end. I can't tell.
I'm just busting your balls. Man. Don't worry.
No, but so you guys are still not hearing that.
No.
Not through Discord.
Just do whatever you did last time.
I'm trying to do what I did last time. All right. You might get an echo if I do this, but it's the best I can do. Okay, go away.
tool for proving a piece of music's
Getting it now?
That's good.
I hear
worth.
something now.
That piece that we checked out at the beginning about Lady Gaga argues for Lady Gaga's genius
Okay, here we go.
using music theory and uses the stylistic practice of white Europeans as evidence of genius, like the raised leading tone. I'm honestly not sure how this is evidence of transcendence for a fun, popular song, but okay. Another article from the same author argues
The reason Teenage Dream went to #1 and remains in radio rotation is that it's a textbook example of the excellence and supremacy of the rules of Western music theory.
So, yeah, it's right there. You don't actually have to look very far for evidence of white supremacy in music theory. William O'Hara points
What?
out that these kinds
What?
of articles, these think pieces, frame music
That's-
theory as a kind of
You don't want to hang on that
knowledge
too long,
that
but
you
is
can
that
use to
a cultural?
identify.
I mean, that goes back to what Dr. Yule was saying of like, even if you do mean that in a strictly cultural way, referring only to the art, you'd be, they're way more loath to admit the race and the white. Like, I guess that's kind of what he's getting at, but that seemed like a little backhanded for me. You know
Also,
what I
that
mean?
wasn't that just some jack wagon who wrote an article? Like,
That's what it sounded like. It was,
I don't.
yeah.
Where did that? Just because some guy said Western supremacy, it's like, well, you don't need to look far. There it is. this guy wrote an article.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you're just looking for the like, if the category of you don't have to look far is like some jerk off on the internet, then you don't have to look far for finding a lot of things, man.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, that's all I had.
All right.
What's up, Joe?
Genius. O'Hara parallels this practice to the work of Henryk Schenker, who used his theories of analysis in the early 20th century as a means of identifying genius in the works of Beethoven and Bach. Which means, that's right, everybody, it's time to talk about part 5/7, flat 9, sharp 9, flat 13. Heinrich Schenker, I guess.
I hate to be this guy. I think we stopped at part 4 last time.
No, we finished part 4. Or yeah, we finished part 4.
I think we got to part 4 last time. Like the end
Really?
of the last podcast.
Oh,
with,
yeah.
like see
Yeah,
where your
he's
mouse is right there. See where your mouse is.
Oh my god, we have that much left to go. Oh my god. All right.
Yeah, we only got like halfway through the video.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if this is like total nut job mode. I sometimes listen to things. Yeah, because this.
No,
the
this is
Pythagoras
actually-
stuff, so
this
we
is-
actually can't skip this.
You cannot skip
Um,
this.
It's
No.
important.
I was gonna say, I mean, would you be, you can put Adam. Adam has a pretty slow cadence speaking. Do you want to put him on 125 or something, or? I mean, I listen to things at 2 speeds sometimes, so maybe I'm just a nut job. But
I don't think
you guys
that
wanna-
it's the video that's
I don't
slowing
think
us
that'll
down.
like.
It won't change anything.
Yeah. Yeah, it won't change anything.
All right, ready?
whatever. All right.
And neither is music. Part 4, Major 7. Music is not a universal.
Now hold on to hope.
This is where we stop.
There's this deep sense that music is somehow above culture.
You like music, don't you?
That music is transcendent, like mathematics. It's universal. Math is math. Music is music.
Let's go to ancient Greece, to the time of Pythagoras.
Pythagoras is widely hailed in popular culture as the father of both mathematics as well as music. Music was taught as part of the quadrivium in medieval Europe, alongside astronomy, geometry, and mathematics. Music was number in time, geometry was number in space, and astronomy was number in space and time. That makes a kind of sense, right? Or at least that's how Europeans have traditionally thought of it. There was this concentrated push in 1960s Cold War America to make the language of music theory more like a hard science and less like an art, to return it to the mathematical purity of the quadrivium.
From this harmony in numbers developed the musical scale of today.
Composer-theorist Milton Babbitt would try and make testable statements about musical compositions, and Benjamin Boritz took that a step further and attempted to use formal logic to make meaningful musical statements. Not sure if he succeeded, but that does look impressive, I guess.
The Pythagoreans, with their mathematical formula, came the basis of our music of today.
The push to make music theory more and more objective had the effect of erasing any trace that it ever had a white European cultural perspective, because, after all, how can mathematics have a cultural perspective? It's just math.
People who want to believe in race neutrality, they want to believe in a colorblind society. Why do you always have to make it about race? Stop talking about race so much. It's not about race, it's just about good music. There's only two kinds of music, good music and bad music.
That is kind of impossible to do because different
Okay,
cultures, ethnicities,
can we
and
stop there real
races
quick?
might value
I was just like
different
letting it
things
go
in
longer so we
music.
can get bigger chunks, but this was the first time we met. I think I said one of my biggest issues with the general video is that they don't bring up the overtone series at all. Like they frame everything as if it's a perspective, including all of Western music, and like he says, it's attempting to make it objective erases any thoughts about the fact that it might have had a European framework, or even more specifically a male and European framework. But and then they bring up it's really cute. They bring up the Donald Duck cartoon, but then they kind of hand wave away Pythagoras, and it's like he was important for actually talking about intervals and or kind of codifying at least some of the intervals. He put something behind it. Maybe I'm just maybe I'm a little foggier today than I was last time. But this really bothered me because he kind of hand waves it away, like I said, as a way of just like kind of hiding the fact that there ever was a perspective, or it's impossible to have this perspective. But you are hand waving away that years and years of work of different people making music went into finding these things and finding which things are more common, or at least to some degree, which things are more consonant than others. You know what I mean? And the fact that he hand waved this away, kind of, I don't know, man. It kind of didn't sit well with me. It seemed pretty sneaky. Cody, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I mean, this whole video, Adam Neely's just being disingenuous, and he was disingenuous from the beginning. And this is another thing. I know Adam Neely knows what the overtone series is, and I know he knows how we came to the conclusion we did about how we created scales. You know, it's not arbitrary. It was like almost entirely scientific at first.
Yeah. He frames it as if it was always this cultural, hegemonic thing, and then they tried to put a veneer of science over it. This is something people try to say stuff where it's, I think you're putting the cart before the horse. Like, actually, this was more scientific than you might have remembered from the beginning. And Adam knows that, I think, is why you're saying he's disingenuous.
Yeah.
Because he does know that. There's an and he's going to start going off about, this is, part of the hegemony of the white racial frame of music theory, which is kind of one of Dr. Yule's hypotheses. And I went back and listened to a bit of our part one, just to kind of, because there was a lot of rambling and good discussion, and then we'd eventually find gold nuggets. And I kind of went back to try to find one of the gold nuggets. And I think one of the best ones that I could bring back at the moment is something like, he talks about how all the theory textbooks start out with notes and scale and tuning and this and that. But then we talked about the math analogy, which was good. And then the language one, we kind of got to something. And to his credit, I think it was Kevin who brought this up, in terms of, I brought up that most of my students are people who have been steeped in a tradition and are learning to play or want to play. Right. It's either classical, jazz, rock, modern hip hop, all these things, blah, 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 blah. And Kevin brought up the language analogy in terms of, obviously all of us here, we all knew how to speak English by the time we got to preschool and to kindergarten. Yeah. It's just that we didn't have the technical nomenclature of the technical wherewithal to discuss these things with other people at like a more meta level. And there's this weird way of, because we start the music theory textbooks this way, we're actually ingraining the whatever we want to ingrain right from the beginning. But it's actually, again, like, you have it a little backwards. These are people who have, the reason we start with figured bass and Western tonal harmony is because these people, to some degree, whether or not they can play it, or only maybe they recognize it a bit in their ear and they can kind of hear where something's going, to some degree, these people already speak this language. You feel what I mean?
Yeah,
I think that's kind of one of the best points we were eventually getting at, and maybe it got cut short, but we're all people who already, and even when you show up to your first class, we all speak this language already to some degree or another. It's just the basic theory classes are learning the verbs and the nouns and the adjectives and why things kind of go the way they do, at least as far as you know so far.
Yeah.
Does that ring a bell for you guys too?
Yeah.
And I just thought that would have been valuable to bring up as something from last time, and we could continue from that.
Yeah, I mean, as a I don't know the word, music novice, person who knows enough to know I don't know anything, or I know very little. It's it sounds like he's using the snob argument, which is legitimate. Like there are people who are snobs. Using the English language again, people who use giant words as a snob because they're very educated and they have spent a lot of time, and judging all works of literature based on that would be considered snobbish. But I would never say that it is Eurocentric white supremacy. Like all I see is like
Sure.
there could be
like,
a
can
problem.
it be one without having to be the other?
Yeah, there
You
could.
know what I see is I see like basically when he's saying like there's this unified Western narrative of music theory. Well, I think what he fails to realize is an admission of like the more cosmopolitan implication of that, because it didn't have to be a unified Western thing. There could be several competing schools of like, no, this is the German way of music, and that's right. No, this is the French way of music, and that's right. No, this is the English way of music, and that's right.
To be fair, it kind of was that at first.
Yeah, I was going to
And
say,
like,
I'm
I
pretty
think
sure it
we
is
were
like
at
that.
we were at that level some time past. So it's like, if you're complaining that like we've been gradually erasing the borders, we've been expanding the concentric circles to something that's generally Western, what that implies is that it's going to continue expanding. And it's just, a lot of it's just human beings figuring out how to communicate with each other. It's like, I feel like a lot of European history in the last 2,000 years was these folks from different cultures learning how to get on the same page with each other.
Mhm.
And by and large, we actually see that now. Most of Europe is unified under the European Union, and if not through formal alliances and such, they're no longer in that kind of conflict with each other. And, it can continue out from there across the world. And it seems to me like the implication is that he's mad that we have reached this progress so far for some reason that I
Yeah,
really
and
can't put my finger on.
I
He's
think
like,
that's
mad
a good.
at the progress.
Yeah, I think well, I don't know. I don't know if that's the right way, but and then we should maybe mention that something we mentioned last time was, I think Cody, Kevin, and I all said something like this at one point or another, but it was basically like, if this were a game of constantly of asserting the whiteness over any other thing that might poke its nose into our space, quote unquote, our space, you know what I mean, like from that point of view, they would have done that in a better way years ago. Debussy would not have integrated the great parts of gamelan music, or at least imitations of it, into his own music. The people who went to India and heard Indian rhythmic solfege, they saw how useful it is for dividing beats, and they would not have brought that back. They would have said, you know what I mean, if they, supremacists of any race they can logic themselves into, or you can, what do they say? You can reason yourself into anything crazy. You can't reason yourself into anything out. They would have some roundabout way for not taking back an incredibly useful tool. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like, it's Joe. I gotta admit, actually, you on my end, you started cutting out toward the end, so I maybe I missed your very last point, but it's kind of like what you were saying of these the concentric circles keep expanding outward and bringing in more and more. And I think we've been bringing in more and more, including things that are not European cultures, for years.
Well,
100 more than 100 years at this point.
I can't help but return
He's
to
living in
like.
denial. Complaining about his denial or something. I don't know.
I just
Can
can't.
I say that one?
I
Can you
can't-
say that one more time, man? I'm sorry. The last person that was speaking. I'm really sorry. It broke up only in I think it's just my headphone, not you.
I'm done. I think Jimmy was saying something.
Sorry, Jimmy, then go ahead.
You're good. Yeah, I just can't help but return to who's making the most money. I mean, it's definitely not music theorists. It's definitely not. And it's definitely coming from a place that would stereotypically not be described by, European, Western, whatever the hell he uses. So like,
yeah,
I mean, if we're gonna talk about whether there's something in the culture that is in the way, well, if music theory is a tool for oppression, it's surely not working.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I don't believe that it is
Go ahead.
a tool for oppression, because everybody I've ever talked to who's interested in music theory feels much more like it's interesting to try to use music theory to describe things that music theory hasn't been able to describe.
I have a prediction. I have a prediction that most of the people who liked Adam's video are people who themselves are not formally acquainted with music history or theory or any of that stuff. That most actual students or practitioners of music to whatever professional degree won't actually see anything insightful in this video.
It has an enormous amount of likes.
But how many of those are like non-musical wokists who are just like,
I don't know. I feel like Adam Neely's audience is musicians who are intensely interested in this stuff.
Viral, like with a non, with a bass that's not its own.
I think part of it also might have to do with, I think, Adam's audience itself probably covers a wide like skill level of musicians, from novice all the way up to people who really know what they're talking about. Certain fields, the arts included, have started to skew more and more. And these are the kind of arguments, especially like the roundy ones. Like something we said last time was, there was something we kind of kept saying, like Dr. Yule at one point said that there were two little phrases that were so small, but we actually picked them apart a little bit, because the phrases I believe were, Adam says, we looked at the music of these guys whose styles were oddly prioritized, referring to the white European German composers. And then Dr. Yule says, like, and then we're still teaching figured bass in these books. Are you kidding me? And those are the two statements we picked apart, of oddly prioritized and are you kidding me? It's like the people who are on that page of like, you know what I mean? Of like kind of already people who have already drank the Kool-Aid of white supremacy is in literally every single field, and it's inescapable and it's all encompassing. It's like, to those people, it's like those are two very low effort statements upon which you don't have to expand, and you've actually already conveyed most of what you want to convey to the people. Like, you know what I mean? There's a target audience for that, at least most of it. You kind of you remember what I'm getting at? And it's like, sure. I think that's kind of where it was a little weird, but
I'll be right back. I gotta change up my battery. Keep on trucking.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's you and me, Jim boy.
I can't help but return.
Jim, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking that this video irritated me, and watching it again has not made it less irritating. I mean, it's that simple.
Is the company of other musicians making it maybe a little less irritating, or putting some of your thoughts maybe into
most of my friends are musicians.
Words, or?
Most of my friends are musicians, so like I've talked to them about it.
Got it.
My roommate is a bass. He plays bass, and he was like he might have been who introduced me to Adam Neely, and he was a little disappointed in the video, like not because there's nothing to be said there, but because the way it was said is so like unhelpful.
Yeah, actually, while we're waiting for Cody, Jimmy, I actually have something that might be useful for you, or at least that's relevant to what happened last time. So last time, for those that don't remember, and Cody's back, but I was using this as a moment, just what I was gonna say, Cody and Joe, if you're there, that something for Jimmy, actually, not necessarily for the video, but I kind of thought about that first episode, and there was a moment, I forget, it must have been at least 20 or so minutes, we got caught up on the definition and the implications therein of critical race theory. And Jimmy, you and Kevin were going back and forth about that, and Kevin was talking about, have you read the actual philosophers? And Jimmy, you were saying things like, regardless of the actual philosophers and what they're doing, they've unleashed a monster that's now affecting my life. And you guys kind of were not butting heads, but there was a weird, like, speaking past one another for a little bit. And I think I thought about that just a little bit. And what I thought I might have said was, or that maybe, and you can feel free to agree or disagree or tweak this statement. And Cody, now that you're back, so can you, and Joe, and who's the other person who showed up? Oh, it's Chris. Hi. Is that Kevin might be right when he talks about the actual critical race theorists, but the way in which you're describing it, Jimmy, of, it's kind of just, when people sometimes say that, they mean it in a much more broad way of just the, this ever-growing umbrella of social justice, and its capital S, capital J with a TM, and its peculiar overreach that it has, is that the things Adam is doing in this video falls much more under your definition. than it does Kevin's.
Yeah,
which I think you guys were getting at. You know what I mean? And it's like it seems to fit within that broad, which is like Kevin said, it's a cultural and frankly political movement or trend. And I think you are correct in terms of that. Most of the stuff he's saying here is kind of the wishy-washy. Like, I'm sure if we shut this video off and you asked us to remake it, like these are all the kind of, we've all heard points like this so many times. You can talk about the centricity of this and the framing of that. Like, you know what I mean? I think it's fitting much more into what you were saying. The gripe was that Kevin was. Are you kind of picking up what I'm getting at?
Yeah, no, I get it. And I have a perfect response, and it's that in the Cynical Theories book club that we're doing, I have to silence all of that because it's explicitly not what there is to be talked about, because they're talking about the actual philosophers. And so I don't bring up what people, I mean, I will sometimes remind Sam that, like, but this is more than that. But if we're talking about critiquing the philosophers, that's one thing. But this is completely different. This is not that. If anything, this is what I would say is, this video is proof of what I'm trying to tell Sam in the other one, that like it isn't just the philosophers anymore. And I mean, and attacking, I think the book's mistake in that case was it trying to attack the philosophers. The only thing I would attack the philosophers for is not coming out and be very loud about how Adam Neely's shitty fucking video makes their lives harder. Because do you know what I mean? Like,
I think I get what you mean. And I haven't been to the Cynical Theories book club, so pardon me if there's context that I'm missing. I think I understand what you're getting at, but in a weird way, it's almost really funny because it's like when people with very, very, very vague or like maybe not even very much knowledge of music try to say like the whole thing about white supremacy being everywhere, including in music theory. It's almost like take that same argument and bring it into our realm. Well, which composers have you studied? Well, I haven't, I don't know. I've just heard some of their music. Well, no, but which actual theorists have you read? Well, I don't know, but you know what I mean? But their music is out there and it's being used for this purpose. Like, if you had this conversation in 1938, but their music is being used for this purpose, and therefore, maybe it's a shitty analogy. I'm being a little cheeky here as well, but you know what I mean? It's almost like the inverse of what you're saying with the critical theory.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. It's perfect.
Please let me know. Sometimes I'll be cheeky and like make a joke. If it falls completely flat and I have to make a new point, like let me know. But sometimes I just gotta know, like just to be sure.
No, it's perfectly said. It's like how I need to remember that when we're doing Cynical Theories, that this is a book that is attacking the philosophy, and thus I should keep the conversation about the philosophers. This is explicitly not. So bringing up what the philosophers actually say, I don't know why that's relevant to any of the critique.
I see.
You know what I mean?
Especially. If we're gonna have
to make
he does that
divide,
bait and switch of like he keeps calling it the 18th century, this and that, but then he starts talking about the way that it's used in general culture, and we established last time that the way it's used in general culture is not 18th century conventions; it's 18th, 19th, and 20th at least.
Is there a divide or not? Is there a divide between the philosophy and the things like this video? Or is there not? Because if there isn't, then I should be able to bring up this video in Cynical Theories book club. If there is, then no one should be able to bring up the philosophers when we're discussing this video. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think I feel you, man.
Like, it's like if we're talking about climate change, okay, are we having a conversation about Greta, or are we having a conversation about climate scientists? Because, like, you know what I mean? Like, because they're very different. If they're the same, then we should be able to bring up anybody. If they're not the same,
I see what you mean.
Then the lines can't be drawn where it's convenient for the other side. That's all.
Yeah, and it's often hard to do that because you try to stick to the thing, and then folks will bring up fucking Greta.
Mm-hmm.
How dare you bring up Greta?
How dare you? How dare you?
She's cute. She's a good girl. I'm not being mean. I promise.
I feel bad for her because her life is gonna suck when she's not famous anymore and the world doesn't end and she's known as the girl who's like.
I think she'll be fine.
I don't know. I feel bad for every single kid who is made the figurehead of something because they have no idea what is gonna happen.
Like
what is happening to them? Yeah, I feel bad for the Covington kids. They should have never had to be on that. I feel bad for every child actor star. You know, I just,
to be fair, if I had to get harassed a little bit on the news for 2 weeks and then get $250 million, I might take it.
I don't feel bad for every child.
I'm joking.
Many of them.
I don't know.
What was that, Joe?
said I don't feel bad for every child actor star, but I do feel bad for many of them.
Well,
I don't feel bad for Daniel Radcliffe.
here's the difference. Here's the difference. The Covington kids are not being used as a figure like Greta is. Something happened. They were in the news, and then they solved it in courts, and they're not being used. They're not like the kids themselves are not being used as figureheads of a movement and anti-media movement. You know what I mean? They're not on platforms making talking points and having tons of people listen to them and having their developing their little kid developing minds being overflowed like with dopamine, and you're doing good for doing absolutely nothing. I just don't think it's good for him. The kid from the shooting in Florida, he's gonna have a fucked up life as an adult. Greta's gonna have a fucked up life growing up. When you realize that you're nobody and nobody cares about you, which is something everybody has to learn to deal with. You have to learn to deal with that, and I think that's a lot harder when in your developing years you were treated like you were something when you weren't. Anyway, that's way off topic.
It did get a little off, but it's nice to be here with you all. So,
all right, you guys want to continue?
Go.
Yeah, let's
man,
continue
sure.
the video.
All right. Oh, okay.
Might not agree on what music actually is. Dr. Kofi Agawu points this out in his paper on the West African bell pattern. Imagine, if you will, a New World Order in which African approaches to rhythm pedagogy predominated in the American Academy. No one would be granted a music degree who could not dance.
Cool.
So, yeah, I certainly would not be able to graduate from this academy. It feels kind of off, right? But for a West African musician, that might just be kind of common sense. Dance is essential for understanding the layered metric structure of many African styles, and it can also help with performance. This is backed by neuroscience. Studies show that body awareness and movement is essential for how all humans perceive metric structures. Embodied cognition of music is at the very foundation of rhythmic and musical understanding in humans. So why wouldn't dance be required of every musician? Like, seriously, why don't we do that?
So could we pause here?
Philosopher.
Could we pause here? Could we pause here 1 second?
Yep.
So one thing that this is one of those this is one of those points that I actually like kind of like in a way, because he's getting to something cool and almost gets to like proposing a solution that's not just like from a weird like cheap place. Like we actually mentioned last time, I mentioned that I had to do a bunch of Afro-Cuban stuff and how the West African bell pattern, like it's the bell person who decides kind of where one is, like, you know, everything just kind of happens around that. I don't want to get on a tangent about that, but so this is something cool because they speak about dance being so integral to music and learning it, and in a lot of these 18th century harmonica veterans of Western Europeans, like these actually, some people forget these things, especially, you know, speak to your cellist friends. They might not know this. The suites, the Baroque suites, cello suites, violin, they're called suites because they were dances. The courante is a dance. The allemande is a dance. You know what I mean? The sarabande is a dance. All of these things actually did have dances. It's because those things were played in European high court culture, and the high courts had dances, you know, and as monarchies started falling out of practice, this is like a historical thing. Like as the monarchies kind of started falling out and high court practice was not as common, you know, the beautiful music remained, but it didn't always have these people dancing the same way to it. So the dance actually fell to the side, and it's like, and it's like, it's cool because it's a really cool point. I do think that movement, as much as I don't like to admit it because I don't particularly like dancing, movement is important to music. And he's coming at it from this way of like, well, it's, again, like part 3, people who aren't white guys, like it's this guy from a West African perspective saying it, but it actually, like some of the other stuff we found from the first time, does have an analog in the Western European culture we're claiming to criticize. It's just that due to historical things, one of them fell out. You know what I mean? And then because they chose to analyze it in a different way after that, or because after the dances had fallen out, maybe it just wasn't as useful. And you feel what I mean by that? Like it's actually like there's kind of like a little skip that happened. Kevin's here.
Kevin is here. Hello, Kevin.
Great.
He must be getting set up. He's still muted.
Hello.
Oh, there he is. Toot. All right, you want to keep going?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have anything to add to that?
I don't.
Cool.
No, I mean, ooh, uh-oh.
Robin James calls the intentional separation of analysis from culture the epistemology of ignorance.
The practice that naturalizes the common sense intuition of the most privileged members of society as objective knowledge.
We see the separation of analysis and culture in popular media all the time. Like, for example, when conservative pundit Ben Shapiro explains why, in his estimation, hip-hop is not music.
In my view, and the view of my music theorist father who went to music school, there are three elements to music. There is harmony, there is melody, and there is rhythm. Okay. And rap only fulfills one of these, the rhythm section. And so it's not actually a form of music, it's a form of rhythmic speaking.
This argument is actually very old. It echoes a 1918 article entitled Jazz and Jazzism, which rails against the dangers of jazz.
Jazz is the brotherhood of those who, devoid of harmonic and even of melodic instinct, love to fairly wallow in noise. It is a manifestation of a low streak in man's taste that has not yet come out in the civilization's wash.
I'll take that as a badge of honor. Now, we could show that Black American music like jazz
real quick,
and hip-hop do indeed
I don't know terribly much about him, but a friend of mine who knows more pointed it out. I think Ben has actually rescinded that view publicly several times. And when they show the clip of him speaking to that man, it looks like it's on his Sunday show, and there's a black man sitting across from him, which someone told me I think is a rapper. I think it's that Zuby guy. So it could have been that because he was speaking with the rapper, he was kind of bringing up that argument just to have Zuby shoot it down, or just to bring up the other great parts that are still in the. Like I said, I actually don't know terribly much about him. A friend of mine who does watch his stuff more has told me that view has been rescinded publicly several times, way before this video.
Also, who cares what Ben Shapiro has to say about music? I know he plays violin, but like, that's one person. Does the existence of one person with that attitude mean there's systemic racism that music theory is, facilitating in the world? I don't think so.
Wait, Arco, is that you speaking, or is that Jimmy?
Make that point.
That was me.
Well, this is the point we made before. Can someone just be a snob? Like, can someone just be a snob, or does it have to be white supremacy now? Like,
that's what I was saying.
That way.
This sort of goes back into like what the mistake he's been making from the very beginning, which is kind of like conflating what happens in the academic world versus what happens in pop culture. Because Ben Shapiro is like a pop culture music theorist at best. He's not trained in it. He just like
he's not even a
studied
theorist.
it from yeah. And like he has incorrect takes, which music theorists have pointed out over and over again, even if he rescinded the view. But like this is an example of what Neely has done a lot, which is, hey, there's this thing that we're going to call the epistemology of ignorance, but then when he tries to show evidence of it, he's appealing to broader culture, which is not a criticism of academic music theory, but a criticism of culture. So the whole argument of it being music theory is white supremacy, he's not providing examples of music theory, he's providing of culture, he's providing examples of people in culture
exactly
co-opting the term music theory for whatever.
Which is what Adam's doing.
Want. So one possibility here, because that made me have a question, is like, let's say there is some sort of white supremacy element. Like, he is not shining a light on any of it, although he thinks he is. Like, if we assume that there is, he's totally missing the mark, and it's like, it's not in music theory, it's in something else.
Well, this is what we said last time. It was like when it was at the first, I think it was like the first or second time, but Dr. Yule says what they are much more loath to admit is the race and the whiteness, and all of us at the same time were like, who was loath to admit that? You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of one of those like very vague points that you can kind of say for good boy points, but but then it's like, point to the person that kept you out of the academy, point to the person who denigrated your culture's music, you know what I mean? And I guess their argument is you don't have to point to the person, it's wider than that, but at a certain level that falls a little bit flat.
Hey Kevin, I want to ask, because you weren't here, and I want to reiterate what I was saying earlier, because I'm curious what you think and I don't want to forget. So I was saying how in the Cynical Theories book club, we are very focused on making sure that the criticism is of the philosophy, of the philosophers and the philosophy itself. So I try really hard not to bring up cultural examples of it, because it's clear that is what the book is trying to do, and that's where Sam is directing it. So I try not to do that. Once in a while, I'll bring up like, but it is happening in the world. But my point is, oh crap, what just happened? Oh no. Oh well. My point is, so then if that line exists, then shouldn't we be unable to bring up the philosophy in this conversation? Do you know what I mean? Like, is there a difference between the cultural manifestations of things like what critical race theory is becoming in the world and what it is in the academy? Or is there no such line? And what is if we can't bring up how it's manifesting in reality when we're talking about the philosophy, then surely we should not be able to talk about the philosophy when we're talking about how it's manifesting in reality, right?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that sentiment. My view is that there is a line, and so we should critique the cultural part and critique the academic part in different ways.
I agree with that.
But I think like that's sort of my problem with what Neely is doing is he's kind of blurring the line by showing like because it exists in one area, it therefore exists in the other, and he hasn't really even demonstrated it exists in one of those areas very well. So
not to get too meta,
project kind of fails.
Not to get too meta or far away from this, but for me, I've been seeing that sort of blurring happening increasingly for about 7 years. Do you agree with that, or do you think this is like a new thing?
I do agree with you. And I think probably, well, for me, what I think is the biggest problem is this essentialism that pops up. Like cancel culture is a really great example of essentialism. If you speak with someone who said a racist comment, just a racist comment, if you speak with them on Twitter, or if you say they had a good take in some other area, all of a sudden now you are a racist. There's that type of like guilt by association, and you are essentially the bad thing. Your whole essence is that bad thing that was portrayed in that one action. That type of essentialism, I think, is really a big problem in our culture right now. And I see it on the left. It's really obvious on the left right now. I also see it on the right, but it's less clear. I think it's sort of like a...
On the right, they had their bout with it.
I'm just noticing it.
I think the right had their serious bout with it in the 2000s, and it never really got all that dangerous unless you happen to be gay. Do you know what I mean by that? Like the religious right. I think that was more late 90s, early 2000s. But that was a similar kind of thing.
Whoever was mad about South Park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. You want to continue? I'm going to take that as a yes.
Melody and harmony, but we don't even need to do that to show that Ben Shapiro's argument isn't great. Let's say, hypothetically,
So let's say, for the sake of argument,
there was a Ben Shapiro in a society that framed African ideas of music as objective knowledge. In this case, his
music theorist father, who went to music school,
went to the kind of music school that Kofi Agawu described. In this case, Ben Shapiro would not consider Bach chorales to be music because you couldn't dance to them. Dance is an essential quality of music, as everybody knows, as neuroscience proves, and so Bach chorales objectively are not music.
Can we pause it there?
Yeah.
Argument doesn't really make sense.
So it doesn't matter because let's say we live in this society where people don't think rap music is music or whatever, but rap music still exists and sells insanely well. So why does it matter what people think of it is, whether you define it or not, when it's clearly really marketable and people are buying it? Why does it matter? So Adam Neely is framing this argument as if we would live in a society that, I guess in this context, it'd be black supremacist or something, and thus music like Bach would never exist, and people would look down on it, and they would despise it. And like maybe those other two things are true, but I don't know, man. Rap has been prominent for a really long time and sells like hotcakes still. So I just don't buy that argument.
Yeah, and I think well, number one, it does sell like hotcakes, but two is that I think like I said, take the asterisk on this of that. I'm not particularly. I only know him like not that well, but he's just like a general like snob kind of elitist kind of person. So maybe can he just not like rap? He has stated that jazz is quote unquote black music, and he loves jazz. So it's like it's almost like that thing of like what Kevin was saying of this essentialism. Like you have to like all of it, otherwise you're the worst thing. You're the racist because of it. And I'm not saying that people can have racist views about rap music and can try to justify them, like with music theory, you could even say. But I don't know. Like there are sometimes like he gets most of the way there, and it's like at the end, like, or maybe he gets not really all that much there. But that's why I'm here talking to you guys. So
yeah.
I think something that's interesting that's neglected is that maybe there's this idea that in the West, music has had a clear definition throughout its history, but that's not the case because music had functions when it was like existed in the Catholic Church, and then there was music in the folk realm, which had totally different function, which might be more similar to like what he's describing from Africa. Like there were certain types of dance music, and without the dance, there was no music there. And so that concept is not just in Africa; it also existed in like folk music in Europe. We can look at like Bulgarian music, for example. Yeah. So like, even though Bach might not have a beat to it to dance to, the folk music in Bach's area probably did.
It did, and
probably had a lot of dance involved. And Baroque dance was a huge deal at the time.
Yeah,
so
Kevin, actually, before you got here, I'm so sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to bring it up to you. That's exactly the point I was making before, is that they were talking about how you can't divorce the importance of dance to the music, and that Baroque suites, like Bach's cello suites, actually were all dances. Part of high court culture was that the courante, the allemande, the sarabande, all these are dances. You know what I mean? And
exactly, and the dances had certain functions. Like for example, all the dudes were wearing those like high cuff pants so that their calves could be shown, and the dancing would accentuate their calves because calves were seen as sexy. So dudes were like flexing their calves in Baroque dance, like Bach's music.
Wow,
man, I would have done well back
like,
then.
Aristocrats could like.
So they were objectifying dudes.
So it was the WAP of the 18s.
Yeah.
It was actually called Bach Big Ass Calves.
Yes. Right.
I want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. So I've always been complimented on my calves. Does that mean that I'm not a Baroque millennial, but a Baroque millennial?
That's right. 100%. So and the definition, I just think that like the definition of music, of course, is contextual. And like the purpose of music is contextual. Like I'm sure you could go to another culture and be like, yeah, that's music, duh. And someone from that culture could also come to ours and say, yeah, that's music, duh. But then they might have other things inside of that, like, but it's this kind of music, or I can't dance to it.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. Like I said, sorry for jumping in to cut you off before. It was just want to know why you showed up late, and it just dawned on me as you were saying what you were saying, that my point before about all the Baroque, like so much Baroque music actually being dances, it was just like that was the perfect time to bring it back, and I didn't want to forget. So my apologies on that.
Oh, dude, it's all good. No worries.
Thank you very much.
All right. Shall we continue?
Yes, we shall.
It's a bad argument, but it's no worse than Ben's 100-year-old racist view on black music.
Much to my disappointment, there are still people in music theory, I wouldn't say who are white supremacist adjacent. They still believe it. They know they can't say it.
You'll very often see articles where Western music...
Wait a minute. That's thought crime. First of all, that's thought crime. Second of all, you have no evidence of that. You have no evidence of that.
Yeah, that's what we were saying before. This is just one of these. There was an article that came out recently, and I put it to the side to read it and haven't yet. But the title sticks with me. Of like, there are certain things you could classify as luxury beliefs. You just have it. It's like, for lack of better words, virtue signaling. That's like one of those low. That's just like a low res, low effort like thing that you can say that makes you like, oh no, so you're one of the good ones. You're woke and you're aware of the corruption, you know. But it's like, whom? Like that's a pretty serious charge. Like in 21st century USA, like white supremacist adjacent, that's actually pretty fucked.
Well,
Like,
it's
can
becoming
someone here correct me if I'm wrong? Is that okay? Has it been okay the whole time?
No,
No, it's the
this
same
is my
thing where it's like they're just boy who cries wolf at this point, where it's like I don't actually even know what white supremacy means anymore. I thought I did, but apparently not. But then to call it adjacent, so then what? It's like, oh well, then if it's not white supremacist adjacent, then it's white supremacist adjacent. Like, where does it stop?
Israel.
I got called an alt liberal.
So they're like, what?
Recently.
No.
So
what are you saying, Joe?
I was saying like Israel's next to like Syria and Jordan and stuff. So are they like radical Islam adjacent?
Right.
I mean, come on.
It's
adjacent in space and not in ideology. I don't know, but like this is. I don't know. This is one of those things. Like I said, it's a luxury belief. It's low effort. You say it because it's like what we said before. And Kevin, you missed this, but we were acknowledging like statements like oddly prioritized. And are you kidding me? White supremacist adjacent. It's hitting the exact target audience that he means to hit with almost no effort and no explanation or expounding.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
It's low hanging fruit, and there's nothing
For sure
really to back it up.
Yeah.
It's very strange fruit.
And honestly, my real opinion here is it hurts the actual theorists where he's pulling this shit from.
Yeah.
Because
definitely.
Because like the natural response to this is going to be, well then fuck you. And I don't want anything to do with it. And you know what? Critical race theory is illegal now.
Well,
like
there's also, speaking to this point, Jimmy, there's like been a rash of articles this past week about how playing Beethoven is racist. Playing it.
What?
Jesus.
Yeah.
Where is
So,
it?
like,
Can you link us to this shit? What is this?
I can send you some of these articles that have come out. But like basically,
Wait,
like,
you said a rash, as in like plural?
Yeah,
As
there's
in-
several. Yeah, that have been popping up on my Facebook feed, and I've just been reading them, sort of thinking,
What
like,
websites
what?
are they? Like Vice or like?
Well,
or
we mentioned one
Huffington
last
Post
time.
or-
I mentioned the Vox one last time.
Yeah, it's like.
But then this also goes to.
Supremacy.
Sorry, but this also goes to the same exact question I brought up of like a lot of the people who clicked like on Adam's video are the same ones who every couple months will share the Black Beethoven conspiracy theory. So it's like, is it white supremacy to play him, or is he a great black, or is he one of the great black artists of the world? Because you can't have it both ways.
Right.
And it's like it might be silly to bring that up again, but that's not trivial. If you're one of the people that press like on this video and have also entertained the other idea.
You reminded me I forgot to press dislike on this video, so thanks.
I never pressed like or dislike on any video, but I can tell you I know the people who press like on it. Like I actually, if I go out in my city and I go interact with people, I can point to you the people who I know have seen this video and liked it. I know who they are. They didn't think about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Jimmy,
I know exactly what you mean.
I know what you mean too. But Jimmy, how many of those people do you think also 6 months ago were the people that said, Slay King and shared the Black Beethoven articles?
Oh, all of them.
Like what percentage would you say have shared those?
All of them. All of them.
It's a clean 100. You're saying a clean 100.
Yes. There's
one
like
hundo.
there's a 0% chance that I'm wrong. That's. I mean, I'm being.
I love the confidence. But listen,
being
I know
extremely
this point might really sound silly. Oh, thank you, Cody. Is it 100?
100%.
This point that I'm making, and I'm making it for the part, the second video in a row, and it really might sound silly, but it's actually like, it's really not when you look at the implications. Like you really backed yourself into a corner with this
because of the implications.
Because of the implications therein. Either it's just playing him, not even studying him, but playing with him is this act of cultural hegemony. But actually, no, they wanted to take him back, or they because of his greatness, and you know what I mean.
Man, but Beethoven is an above average composer, I guess.
I mean, we're gonna give him. He deserves a spot at the table. Example number 2 on page 145.
Right.
Boom.
He deserves a spot at the table, just like Cardi B and Snoop Dogg. They deserve the exact same spot.
As long as you guys understand my how irritated it gets me that I know many of the people with, I'm not going to say super high level, but not novices. I'm sure a lot of teachers, a lot of medium level musicians saw this and click like on this video and are also the same people who share the aforementioned theories that I've mentioned. And it's like, you can't have these both ways. There are really serious implications there, and I don't think you've thought it through. It's just about whatever makes you look really good on Twitter that day. And sorry, pardon the cynicism, but I'm sometimes you gotta you just gotta do it. But
I think people often forget with like these concerts that are curated where they're playing Beethoven and things like that. The reason why that stuff is played is because it sells and it keeps the orchestra afloat.
Yeah.
Like I've worked with opera boards. I've been on orchestra boards. I have my own classical ensemble. And in all of those cases, it's a conversation that comes up over and over and over again. The people who are giving these organizations money because they rely on donations to survive are the ones who are saying, I want you to play Beethoven. So when you're running, like you can have these other projects and those other projects are really important. Like it's very important to commission composers who historically haven't been commissioned, but are getting more commissions now. Like that's important. It's important to play composers that historically haven't been performed. That's important. We can still play Beethoven. That can still be part of the conversation. We can relate Beethoven to these composers who are writing today and be like, these guys are innovative in the same way Beethoven was. Beethoven's cool because of this. These people are cool because of this. And we can make it like, we can have both of those things. And so Beethoven doesn't have to be excluded a priori as racist. It can be like a foil for providing something familiar for audiences today so that they can understand music that's written by people living in our time period.
Yeah, I think this extends well beyond music for me because it's the same thing with let's say colonialism, for example, or science or anything that the West has gotten right. It's not because we were white. It's because we happened to evolve in a place that had like a lot of domesticatable animals and a lot of water and a lot of fertile land, a pretty easy, these are all the reasons why. Has nothing to do with race. And had it been reversed, had Africa had all those things and Europe was the one that was all, that had all the trouble, it would have been the other way around. I mean, I get it. It's not fair. It's not fair that one culture has like massive amounts of written history that other cultures don't quite have. They have the length, but they don't have the amount in terms of like what the printing press provided or what a formalized education in music might have provided. So it's not that they haven't achieved just as much as anybody else. Of course they have. It's just that they didn't have the things that we had, and it has nothing to do with race. There's no racial reason behind that.
There's also, I mean, I do think we're straying a little bit from the point with that, but there's also, like even if you're going to bring the discussion in that direction, one person could say, like you said, it's not like everyone achieved the exact same. It's like, well, in our retrospective lens, it's like even if that were true, we wouldn't be allowed to say it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes.
Are you all right?
Yeah, you got me while I was swallowing water. I was in agreement.
You're that's going in the closed captions, swallowing in agreement. But nice. But and I'm not making, like I said, I'm actually just trying to detach from that point. I'm not trying to get into that discussion, but that is one of those things, like you said, like, it doesn't mean people achieved at this level and other people, or they excelled in different areas. Like, that either has to be allowed or it's not allowed. And I think there's a lack of consistency on that in lots of fields.
Yeah. Totally.
Going back to the video a little bit, I was just thinking, like, he brings up epistemological ignorance, and that can be a really interesting topic. He sets it up as like, if you basically like divorce the academy from broader culture, you're going to be engaging in this epistemological ignorance, and then you perpetuate blah, 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 blah. But that's all we get about epistemological ignorance. And he's not going to like give examples of how culture is divorced from the music theory. He just kind of like makes that claim, and then he's going to go into parts of culture where music theory is brought up, and he's going to say that there's something racist about why it's brought up, or if it's not racist, it's racist adjacent. And if it's not racist adjacent, then the only reason why it's valuable in a society is because historically it was racist, and we just kept it. So therefore,
the goalposts will just keep moving.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. That's how they argue this stuff.
Right. And like this whole thing that I've been sort of bugged about in this video is like how he has conflated this academic practice with what happens in culture. Like, here's the part of the video where he could address it. And I think like he maybe was trying to with this like point, but he fails again.
I think to actually address the culture would mean really pissing off a lot of his fan base.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean,
can you be more specific about what culture? When you say addressing the culture, like could you just be more specific about that?
Yeah, I think he's pointing to sort of like broad popular culture in the United States. So like, you know, what you might find on YouTube or on your Facebook searches or something like that if you live in North America.
Feel ya. Andiamo.
Yeah. All right. Let's go. Jesus, we've covered like 7 minutes.
It's framed as a tool for proving a piece of music's worth. That piece that we checked out at the beginning about Lady Gaga argues for Lady Gaga's genius using music theory and uses the stylistic practice of white Europeans as evidence of genius, like the raised leading tone. I'm honestly not sure how this is evidence of transcendence for a fun, popular song, but okay. Another article from the same author argues
the reason Teenage Dream went to #1 and remains in radio rotation is that it's a textbook example of the excellence and supremacy of the rules of Western music theory.
So, yeah, it's right there. You don't actually have to look very far for evidence of white supremacy in music theory. William O'Hara points out that these kinds of articles, these think pieces, frame music theory as a kind of hidden knowledge that you can use to identify genius. O'Hara parallels this practice to the work of Heinrich Schenker, who used his theories of analysis in the early 20th century as a means of identifying genius in the works of Beethoven and Bach. Which means, that's right, everybody. It's time to talk about part 5/7, flat 9, sharp 9, flat 13. Heinrich Schenker, I guess.
If Beethoven is our exemplar for a music composer, Schenker is our exemplar for a music theorist.
Heinrich Schenker, 1868 to 1935, arguably the most influential music theorist in American music theory.
So in the United States, if you want to get a graduate degree in music theory, I know there are tens of you got to study the theories of Heinrich Schenker. American music theory has very deep Schenkerian roots. David Carson Berry traces.
I have a grad degree from a music school, and we did not study Schenker. It was not required.
Did you get it in music theory?
We didn't study Schenkerian analysis in my music theory. In any music theory I took.
I think Adam just said, if you want to get a degree in music theory, you have to study Schenker.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
My master's is actually in composition. I would have done composition in theory, except for the school I had joined at the time didn't have just the master's in theory. So I did a whole bunch of independent studies, and I could have done Schenker. I did an informal independent study on Schenker with one of my advisors, but I chose instead to go deeper into jazz theory with a different guy. Just for the record.
So he might be right about getting a theory degree.
Yeah, I would assume.
Probably. Right. Well, like I said, I did it informally with one of my advisors too. So, so I
went to community college for 2 years. So,
hey man,
that's
rock on.
No studies there other than the music theory 1, 2, 3, 4. But
ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
Is the popularity of Schenker's ideas of music in America for a desire in the 1930s for more objective musical criticism, which bears more than a little similarity to pop culture think pieces which appeal to the supremacy of the rules of Western music theory today. They're both born from Schenkerian ideals.
He came up with ideas about how the structure of music theory plays out, from a background structure to then a middle ground structure and a foreground structure. So this background structure came in only a couple of varieties. It essentially had a motion from a tonic to a dominant to a tonic chord that could play out in 2 bars, or it could play out in 200 bars or 500 bars. in a movement by Beethoven or Mozart.
Schenkerian analysis has a unique form of musical notation that attempts to identify the deep structure of what Schenker considered the great works of tonal music, what Schenker called the ersatz, the sound of scale degree 3 resolving to scale degree 2 resolving to scale degree 1. In other words, at their fundamental level, all great works of music are three blind mice. This is a bit of an oversimplification, but honestly, not that much.
He had a very short list of great composers. They were, of course, all white men. They were 11. I think some people say 12.
They're, of course, all white.
All German speaking except for two, Chopin, who was a Pole, and Domenico Scarlatti, who was Italian.
If you want to learn Schenkerian analysis,
my name is Dr. Jacob Gran.
I highly recommend Dr. Jacob Gran's videos on YouTube. They're a clear and concise introduction to a very complicated subject that might help you better understand the works of tonal composers. I 100% recommend these videos. They are great.
He drew heavily on
Why would you recommend it if it's white supremacy?
When you watch these videos, though, you start to
I didn't know Adam
realize
Neely
that
was
the
white
concept of
supremacist
figured
adjacent.
bass
Yeah,
is
why am I watching
absolutely
this video
essential
in the
in
first place?
understanding Schenkerian analysis, as well as the idea of continuo. It becomes clearer why there is figured bass everywhere in all of our music theory textbooks. It's because it's all a system designed to teach Schenkerian ideas from the ground up. It's actually pretty explicit in,
I think that's putting the cart
preface
before
to
the
this
horse.
book,
though.
Harmony and Voice Leading.
That's-
This book reflects
that's
the
for sure.
theoretical and analytic approach of Henrik Schenker.
Oh.
The book will provide a valuable
Jamie, can
preparation
you
for
hear
the
me?
later study of Schenkerian
Can we pause it?
analysis. The problem is that Schenker
I
is
just
not
want to hear what Cody and Kevin think of that, because that sounded to me very much like putting the cart before the horse. And then you can pick one of those books like you just did and show the one that's that shows that it can prepare you for Schenker. But it's like it's putting the cart before the horse, because like Cody said, it's like, Cody, what'd you do? You did music theory 1, 2, 3, and 4, and if you were to have gone on to 5, hypothetically, you probably would hit Schenker there, right?
Maybe, I don't know.
I'm speaking purely hypothetically, but you see how it's like for sure, like putting the cart before the horse. Like this guy came along afterwards and used the tradition that was already around, and then started doing his analyses with that language, and then now he comes around and says that entire language that was developed was actually from the, you know what I mean? There was something nefarious there that I'm like, it's like weird.
Yeah, I think what he was saying is like the only reason why.
Like the only reason why we even do
there.
figure bass now is because the end goal is to get them to that, and it's like that's for sure not true.
Right, and I mean, just from like a performer's perspective, especially like a string player, the inversions are really important because the way that you tune a note is different if you're above or below. So for example, like let's say I'm playing an E and I'm trying to tune it to an A. If I do that, then my E will be sharp to a G below the E. So knowing the inversion of the harmony that I'm in will change where I place that note so that it sounds in tune.
For just intonation. Yeah.
Yeah. So
and you know who talked about that?
No.
Pythagoras.
Oh, you jerk! Wow, you're a Greek supremacist. How dare you?
No. But this might be after you might have come in right after this, but we resumed at the Pythagoras section of the video, and like all the things you're saying are completely legit, and it's like you're talking about just intonation, and the A above, the A above actually it'll be sharp relative to the G that would have come, but there's you're tuning for a reason, and it's like, what's that reason?
Right, and so this is just to highlight that, like, if teaching music theory is just to get people prepared for Schenkerian analysis, then it totally erases the reasons why performers are taught it, which is about tuning.
Mm-hmm.
If we're playing this music that uses Western tuning systems, we need to know how to tune in them, and figured bass is a really great tool for doing that.
And like you said, and this brings back our math analogy from the first video, treating it like it's some big high art thing. It's like figured bass is taught in the beginning because it's a relatively simple way of teaching counterpoint, of teaching horizontal movement, and then it prepares you for more complex stuff after that. And then it's like that contrapuntal stuff is kind of the arithmetic to the algebra that comes afterwards, or the calculus that comes way later. And like we mentioned, so that's from the first video. Also, like Hilly mentioned, which I believe they're about to get to, and they kind of just passed over, but Schenker was more a German supremacist than he was You know, like I said, it's like it's
Right.
oddly imperialist of them to put this like broad white view that we have now in 20th and 21st century like America, and before that, to be fair, and like putting it over there to Europe, because Schenker didn't agree with that, and Schenker's students fled to the U.S. And someone in the comments on the first video, someone in the comments, I don't know if this is true or not, wrote Schenker's wife was killed in a concentration camp. So in an effort to hold this guy up as the pinnacle of what is to come as white supremacists or white supremacy in music theory, clearly they didn't think very highly of him when the real ones came along, you know? So
It's a bit, it's a bit like saying what Am Neely said is a bit like saying the only reason why you study algebra is so that you can study Leibniz.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, what? I don't know.
All right.
We good?
Yeah. Actually, the person who said that has been in the chat this whole time. Lester Brunt. Hello, Lester. Okay.
Oh yeah, and he's in the chat in on the current video, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, there he is. I didn't have it open. I'm gonna bring that window back open. What's up, Lester? Shout outs. Shout outs to you.
Not useful in understanding any other style of music besides Western classical music. You can't do Schenker to Meshuggah, for example, or James Brown,
Challenge accepted.
or Yuja Kamat's music. And even within the Western canon, Schenker does not do a very good job of explaining rhythm or timbre or any other musical element. Dance, if we're going to adopt the African worldview.
It's not. It doesn't
We've
have
built music theory.
It doesn't have the goal of explaining those things. So saying that it doesn't explain it well is like saying, well, a hammer isn't great at giving a massage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that. I agree fully.
Yeah. It's a good point.
No, nothing.
I would like a hammer massage, but okay.
Now, maybe we should have said something else, because I'm sure a lot of us are tense. Hammers might sound more appealing as the days go by, so we'll pick something else. But you're right there.
All right, let's keep going.
Theory from the very ground up, with the idea that the only music worth analyzing and worth having a language of analysis for is the music that this mustache liked to analyze. And if you can't analyze music through his theories, then it isn't music. It's not worthy of your time. It's inferior. You can't do music theory to it. This is the legacy of Ben Shapiro and his
music theorist father who went to music school.
Western music theory has developed a language that attempts to show white culture's superiority over non-white cultures under the guise of objective analysis. It's all a system designed to show white supremacy over non-white culture. And if you think that's me being hyperbolic or speculative...
That's a bald-faced lie. I can just... He's lying.
Right. I mean, well...
He's lying, too.
There was never, I've never seen it said that, I've never seen a music theory professor, I've never seen it said in a concert, I've never been around a musician who made the claim that, hey, look how beautiful this fugue Beethoven wrote is. Look how the harmonies all work together. Therefore, white music is better than black music. The conclusion that white music is better than black music has never been stated as far as I've seen. It might have been stated like 40 years ago. Maybe the last generation had racist people who used those things to talk about how like jazz isn't as good as Bach or something, but that's not happening in our generation. And that's not what teachers are teaching our generation now. And so the claim that music theory makes that judgment on music by other cultures or music that belongs to a certain race or whatever, I've never seen that claim. I've never seen people say that.
100%.
Well, that's the even crazier thing. It's like, what do you think people in academic spaces are actually saying right now? Like, my guess, especially as the ones who are more in the art side of things, is that they're more toward the woke side of things. So it's like, what's going to happen as a result?
Actually, yeah, Joe, you're right, and I'm sorry. That's kind of what I was getting at before a little bit too. It's kind of like that troll of what happened just recently when what happened at Princeton. It was the where racism is still alive in us today, and then they got investigated for it, or didn't that just start?
Right. That is the funniest thing I've ever done.
It's and it's like that. It's like all the people. It's like when Adam's not specifying academia versus broader culture, who are you really implicating? Are you implicating all the people who share the same woke views that you do and teach in the same schools? You know what I mean? Or are you, or
I think it was
but,
like,
and Joe, I'm sorry for cutting you off. It was my fault.
Sort of cancel mob, and it's like it's almost certainly gonna be a cancel mob by woke people against woke music teachers, and like
Or
I don't
unwoke
know.
music teachers.
We've seen this story play out again and again. Liberals cannibalize other liberals, and then when conservatives win, when they're the last one standing after the dust has settled, liberals are surprised that they don't get their way. What? You mean by sabotaging ourselves, we didn't get what we want? Oh, no. What are we gonna do now? It's it's the conservatives' fault. They tricked us into fighting each other. It's just that's what I see with shit like this. Like maybe this didn't trigger a cancel mob, but videos like this sometimes do.
Yeah, I've been watching the snake eat its own tail for a while, and yeah, stuff like this is definitely gonna help the snake eat its own tail, no question. Yeah, especially if I do want to read those articles that Kevin was talking about, especially if articles are coming out now saying playing Beethoven is racist or something.
I'm waiting for the article that says MLK was a white nationalist.
Yes,
that'll be a product of the 20s. We won't have to wait in the 30s. It'll happen in the 20s.
This just strikes me as a Robin DiAngelo take. It's very similar to the Jackie Robinson thing. It's like nobody thought of it that way. Nobody thinks of Jackie Robinson as somebody who's the first black player who was good enough to play. Nobody thinks that. Everybody thinks that Jackie Robinson was the first black player who was allowed to play. And it was a difficult life that he lived because it was still a time of deep racism, and he didn't get to, if anything, it's a story about how far we've come and how far we've yet to go. That is Jackie Robinson. And I feel this feels somewhat similar to me. Nobody thinks about it that way. Stop describing things in a way that nobody would agree with you. Where are these people?
And again, it just goes back to the same thing we said before of these low effort, low hanging fruit statements of this is something broad you can say because quote unquote educated people are saying it nowadays. But then we're very, I'm still waiting for these. I don't know. I guess they give some of the examples fall kind of flat. It's like Schenker, we already established was terrible, and then there's a guy who vaguely says Western, the supremacy of Western music, which was that the closest you got, or I don't know. Some of these examples fell a little flat. I mean, I don't know. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we're ready to keep on trucking.
Okay.
No, that's exactly what Schenker set out to do with his theory of music.
He said very explicitly, I think of music like I think of people. I have a unified worldview. There's a hierarchy. White people are at the top. There's a hierarchy. The foreground is at the top. Also, the 11 or 12 composers are clearly at the top. And then he always used the word genius. Genius was code for white. It was also code for German.
This guy's an expert mind reader. He puts my medium to shame. He doesn't even have to be alive at the same time.
He should have his own daytime show.
Yeah,
there's just an audience. Okay, is anyone? I'm sensing. You hate white people. The guy's like, what? It's like, no, really, no. Or maybe your dog. Is it your dog? What is it?
Well, this is just one of those things that we said last time of just they knock any attempt, they finally get close to some reason of why our music might, or Western European music might be the way it is. Here, our music, as in what America and what the things that sprang it forth. It's they vaguely get to Pythagoras and then they hand wave it away. Objectivity, they describe it as a way of trying to disguise the racial frame that was there. But then it's and any attempt at getting to any deeper truth or objectivity, is it difficult to do that? Yes. Are there flaws in trying to do that? Sometimes. But when it comes to knowing about who's white supremacist adjacent and exactly what you think and what these people really wanted to say, or people want to say currently, all of a sudden the ambiguity is gone and objectivity is a real thing.
Yeah,
Again, I'm being cheeky, but not by much.
Here's my problem.
When it comes to this stuff,
go ahead, Cody.
What?
Go ahead,
Oh,
Cody.
when it comes to this stuff, it's like I almost want them to fail so miserably. Like I want someone to just like come for Adam Neely on Twitter or whatever and accuse him of being white supremacist adjacent, or accuse him of any number of things. It's like, well, you've been teaching Western music theory this entire time on your channel, but you must think Western music is the supreme music. 90% of your videos are about.
You have a
this stuff.
responsibility to use your platform like X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
And you haven't.
Yeah, like, but that's just where this stuff leads logically. Like, they'll be coming for him, I imagine. But you know, because I'm a terrible person, I want that to happen to him now. So, fuck me, I guess.
All I was gonna say was I think it's a little, for me it's dangerous in the way that I start to hear things and immediately think, like I feel myself, I feel my the energy I'm willing to devote towards thinking about things that maybe I should be thinking about because I do live a pretty privileged life, really draining. I feel myself getting more to the point where I hear anything about that, I feel something inside me start going, no, because I know where this is going to go. I'm going to spend 44 minutes listening to some asshole make claims that aren't real, and then I'm going to feel like a jackass because I know that if I share my opinion publicly, I'm going to be attacked for it. So, no, I'm not going to participate in this anymore, and I don't think that's a good thing. I think it's
right,
harmful not only to the proposed goal, but for society
It's
as a
harmful
whole.
to the people it's trying to quote unquote help. It's boy who cried wolf. Because if you
Yeah.
say the same exact claim about every single field and every single thing, at a certain point, exactly like you said, Jimmy, a lot of people are going to say, you know what? I have better things to do. Half of this is probably bullshit, just like it's been bullshit the other times, and I'm not interested in hearing it anymore.
Well,
and if you're interested in truly helping these quote unquote marginalized voices, that should be a disaster to you. That's a huge PR problem.
Yeah, it's also
like if you really care about helping people, your PR department has some serious work to do on making some things right.
Yeah, the other thing too is like it's an emotional drain, which is not a bad thing alone. Like, yeah, it is emotionally draining to think about this stuff and actually consider it and actually engage with it, right? But okay, good. I would like to do that. But every time I do that, I find myself having drained myself of tons of energy for nothing, because I'm never going to be able to have a real conversation about this. I'm never going to be able to, I'm never even going to be able to communicate effectively what I actually think, because the line that I have to get there, I have to cross this line, and I can't cross that line because it's like a war zone. It's this kind of shit makes it. This is why this video triggers me, and I'm not even a musician. Most of my friends are musicians, and I know that community.
The issue, I would sense is like I might not be a musician either or any kind of music theorist, but like I am a person who, while not so specifically interested in music, I am interested in theory. I'm in some ways interested in the theory of theory, and I like the processes by which we can develop and refine our model making methods for describing reality. You know, for things that are purely artistic, for things that are soft sciences, and even for things that are hard sciences, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think those are useful things. I value things that allow us to have the integrity of information to get this all down. Really, to get I sort of feel like I'm channeling a bit of Eric Weinstein here, but to find a portal to understanding what the theory of everything is, right? And so when you see something like this, they go about it in this way, the way Adam Neely is going about it. It's just so, obviously about there's just clearly no interest in theory itself, in a discussion about music theory, and I don't think music theory is used in this lazy sense of the term theory. I think music theory, as it's implied when people are taught music theory, or when people quote music theory, it's actually like a a framework of models for describing the phenomenon of music.
Yeah, I
And-
wanna say something real quick because it's in my head, but
Okay.
there's a problem today with information in that we have too much of it, and so we are to go with the Eric Weinstein thing. Like our sense making apparatus is not working anymore, and so when you watch an Adam Neely video, like I have to do one of two things. One, I'm either going to blindly go along with it, which a lot of people did, or I'm going to look into it, which is a lot of work. Like it's a lot of work. Like should I just walk away from this assuming Schenker is a horrible racist? I don't know. Am I do I have to everything I consume, do I have to research it? I don't know, but this sort of behavior, like he knows, Adam Neely knows that the people who are going to like this video, I mean, maybe he doesn't know. Now I'm mind reading. It's clear to me that if you say stuff like this on YouTube, there are going to be a massive amount of people who are going to like it without questioning anything you've said.
Yeah.
So
kind of what we got at before. Yeah.
Yeah, so like who is this for? It's for people who agree with this. It's for people who agree with this who aren't going to question it. And then on my end, it's like I feel myself starting to assume that things are lies based on it being, my woke detector goes off and I'm like, well, this is probably bullshit. And I don't like that because I can't confirm my conclusions either,
It's interesting that you say that. It reminds me of something. This guy was the head of the Progressive Caucus in the North Carolina Democratic Party. He reflected after viewing the documentary Fahrenheit 11/9 after it came out. He did a Facebook status. Just saw Fahrenheit 11/9. I learned nothing, but I felt everything. Is that hitting on what? Because I think he agreed with the documentary, but it also didn't seem to have any particularly profound or insightful information that he hadn't already known by then. So it's like, I feel like there was a point earlier in time, like when Michael Moore was a more, I think, acclaimed documentarian in which his documentaries were insightful about something. After a certain point, though, I get the impression that Michael Moore's documentaries are just something that he knows his steady liberal audience is going to consume, and he can, make a decent buck out of it. Maybe there's some sincerity in what he does.
It's being intimately aware of your niche.
I think the incentives behind Michael Moore's documentarian work these days are different than when he started in the 1980s.
It's like Dave Rubin.
That's actually, you know what? That is a big thing, because I think, if I'm thinking about it, one of the reasons why this bothers me so much is because I know Adam Neely is taken very seriously in the music community. He's considered an asset. People like him. I understand why they like him. He puts out some really cool videos. So it's irritating. It's irritating to be like...
Well, exactly. Also, I mean, for those that are just listening, they might not be able to see. Kevin had to head out, so we all say bye very nicely. But I just opened the chat, and Cody, I see this little screenshot that you put in there, which I think might be worth bringing up. It's really funny. It's funny because they're your two comments. One's a week ago, I guess, during the other discussion, and one is a second ago.
Yeah.
I will. Would you like to read them, or do you want me to read it? 'Cause they're kind of funny.
You should.
Well,
you should read it, Cody.
Yeah, it's all. I mean, it's just the one from a second ago is, Adam Neely, why are you recommending we learn some Schenkerian analysis? Are you white supremacist adjacent? And then my other comment from a week ago is, so I mean, which is it? Is it cultural appropriation for white people to play Indian music, or is it white supremacy for composers, see everyone from Duke Ellington to Bach, to focus on Western tonality?
Yeah, it sucks because it almost like gives credence to some of those, like, I don't want to say like boomer tier or just like, I hate when like I'm sorry if I trigger anyone, but like I hate when like shit tier like conservative argument people try to use like good there's sometimes like people, I lost my train of thought. Like there's a certain point they try to make that I really don't like in there, but it's just like I lost my train of thought. It's got to come back to me because pardon me, guys.
You're
I'm
good.
thinking about so many things now, and I totally forgot.
You're good.
Continue the
Yeah,
video.
let's continue.
Yeah, just do that. It'll come back to me. It'll come back.
In his essay, Schenker the Regressive, the conductor Leon Botstein would write,
The fact that Schenker, an observant and active member of the official religious Viennese Jewish community, adhered to these views and propagated them indicates how deep-seated was the sense of German cultural superiority within German-speaking Europe and how widely it was internalized.
So the most controversial...
That's Germany at that time period.
Austria at that time period.
Yeah, I also think I remember what I was gonna say.
Like that, you've
like,
made no point. That's
so,
Germany at that
Jimmy,
time
do you want to go
period.
first, or do you want me to say what I remembered?
You go.
It's like you ever see that, like, it's like a boomer tier meme that's like shared on Facebook. It's like not engaging in culture. It's like keeping people out, engaging in culture, cultural appropriation. You know what I mean? Moving out, white flight, moving in, gentrification. It's like kind of like oversimplified, but like things. The more stuff like this comes along, it's like gives more and more credence to arguments like that. Like, and the one like Cody, the one you put in the YouTube comments, it's not a bad point. I wasn't trying to say that yours is like that boomer tier, like boomer conservative argument, but like people will start like no, it wasn't. You actually have like you're getting at something, but like the more and more like people will see, like people that maybe don't have the same values as us here, like we'll see things like what you've written and then make more of those boomer memes. Like that's when I was like fumbling around my words. That's what I was getting to. Is like you're gonna make all those things look like, even the oversimplified ones, you're gonna make them all look more and more real.
It's because,
you know what I mean? It's like Boy Cried Wolf.
said,
It's Boy Who Cried Wolf in the other direction. You're giving them more and more credence the more you do shit like this. Like, please.
It's like they said a couple years ago. It's like I can't tell where the satire begins.
That's it. That's really it. That's what kind of.
I think that's a good observation, Juice, because like I will say those of us who are in this podcast right now, we are a non-random sampling of the population. All right, like most of us are pretty liberal to some degree. I don't know if there's anyone here that I would actually say is conservative, right? But we know across just a population, a certain amount of people have more conservative tendencies. And
such as the nature of statistics, yeah.
Yeah, where a lot of folks like Adam Neely shoot themselves in the foot is, like you said, the more they engage in this bait and switch, smoke and mirrors, horseshit argumentation, the more that people who are of that,
center-minded, center and liberal-minded are going to see those double standards.
Yeah, they're going to react even more negatively, and it's going to provoke the toxic behaviors in them that they actively hate.
Yeah, or and to an even
some conservatives will be like, well, fuck it, we'll just do Western music then, and fuck all the other music because you're being
exactly. And then it's like there are people on Twitter who will say, they super reduce that down to like, some people on the left were mean to me and now I'm a Nazi, and it's like shut the fuck up, but two, it's like. But yeah, like I was stumbling over my words before because I kind of lost my train of thought. But once I found it, I'm glad you appreciate the point, because it is true. It's like, making arguments like this of like, first of all, is it cultural appropriation or is it not? Is it gentrification or is it not? You're talking about North Indian as if it's some kind of example. What did the North Indians do to the South Indians? And all the hypocrisy starts unraveling. And then all of a sudden now these like boomer con arguments of like, that are going to, how many people are just going to say, fuck it, if I'm racist no matter what, I'm just going to be racist. And then obviously the answer to that is, let me just put the disclaimer. The obvious answer to that is anyone who says that, maybe they always will say, maybe it was there closer to the service than you'd like to admit. And maybe there's truth to that. But the thing is, there are a lot of people who are going to start being, at least at the very least, they're going to start being edgy and pushing your buttons because of it, because they know you. And then they're going to start, we are non-random sampling, but the more that those edgy memes and the edgy like fuck yous kind of spread their way out through the random sampling, more and more people will start believing that, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, and the point I want to raise as well is like there's basically two ways to look at this, and I think the liberals, I guess the super liberals like Adam Neely who look at it this way, they're only looking at their goals through a moral lens and not through a strategic lens, and I think that's important because while it doesn't justify what the reaction of some of these people are where they say fuck it and they become worse, it does explain why it happens. And if you have a way of understanding why these things play out the way they do, that should inform your strategy. And you don't get your goals based on doing what you think should be the case. You set your goals based on what can actually be achieved with the methods and tools available to you. And I'll bring up a good historical example. the American Revolution. Now, a big part of why the British lost is because they got too caught up in the should and not of what actually works. Like at the time that the 13 colonies declared their independence, about 30% of the country was in favor of revolution, about 30% was in favor of remaining loyal to the crown, and about 40% was neutral. They're just going to go about their daily lives either way, right? Now, when the British started coming over to, resist the...
to squash the resistance.
Yeah, the problem is that they conflated the people who were neutral with everyone who was a revolutionary. They got not immediately going to their support. And so they were, sometimes rough in areas that they occupied where there were neutral camps. And this created sympathy for the revolutionaries and caused the 40% of the neutrals to gravitate toward the revolutionaries. And thus, the support for the war, which it needed to, last long term, grew. And that was a big part of what undid the British war effort and why they don't have the United States as part of their territory and why they lost it. Because their strategy was wrong. They were so caught up in this idea, well, you should be loyal to the crown and to the state and to parliament. Why would you revolt? And why aren't you doing something to stop them, you neutrals? But that just blew up in their face. And I see the exact same dynamic in play with what Adam Neely and several other liberals like him. There's a lot of good points in the video he's making. With the exaggeration shaved off, there's a lot of issues with the history of academia and culture and academia about culture, in terms of things like music theory.
Like most fields will have. Most fields will have people who went in that direction over the time that they've been developing.
Yeah,
and to Kevin's point from his first video, now that he's not here, I will bring up what Kevin would say is that early in the video when they bring up the fundamental question of whether or not that music theory can be a tool of whiteness to exert, some sort of force of whiteness over other cultures. It's like Kevin says that's something that you could use actual critical race theory to unpack, and he never does it. And then he instead rolls along with what Jimmy has hit the nail on the head of, is this kind of this cultural / political thing masquerading as critical race theory, if you want to call it that. I'm being very vague here because I know you guys had some disagreements about that, but you know what I mean. It's almost like that exact. It's that exact thing of just creating more and more enemies very easily and very quickly.
Okay.
All right. Shall we continue?
Let's do it.
The part is not saying that Schenker praised Hitler in a letter to his pupil Felix Eberhard von Kuba in May of 1933, 4 months after Hitler ascended to the chancellor.
I love how they're bleeping out the word Hitler.
The Jews are the greatest enemies to Germany.
I think that's probably like a YouTube.
I think it's a monetization thing, and this is another thing that's super cheap because it's like I don't know. It's like we established Schenker was a German supremacist and not a white supremacist like Hitler was, and even to another German supremacist, his wife got thrown in the camp. And his students had to flee. You know what I mean? I think it's he brings this up, and it's sure. It's what exactly is the bombshell here? He was Schenker was a piece of shit. He was a guy. He was a guy living in Germany in the 30s and ended up being a piece of shit.
He lived in Germany at a time where there was a serious problem with nationalism, and he was a nationalist. Wow, news. I mean, it's a bizarre thing to bring up. It's
Yeah, and anyone who might find this podcast might think that sounds very reductionist, but I don't know. It's but whether or not it was a problem with what, I don't really care how we're describing the bombshell of what Schenker believed. I'm describing what's the bombshell. A person who lived through a historically contentious time had historically contentious opinions. We everyone here would have guessed that. And how does that make music theory today racist? They stray from the point a little bit sometimes, but all right, whatever, go on.
Okay.
Greatest enemies to Germany, and he was Jewish himself. It's not that he said even Negroes think that they can govern themselves. No, it's not that he said these horrible things that the white race must annihilate these Japanese animals because they're Japanese. No, it's not that he said all of those things. No one's going to dispute that. That's all out there.
Karl Schachter, the guy who co-wrote this harmony textbook that we keep referencing, wrote that for Schenker, both his political and musical ideas were armaments in a cultural struggle that would eventually lead to a regeneration of both music and society at large in the German-speaking world. Whew, okay. Now things are getting serious. Music theory's intellectual framework is built on Germany's cultural struggle of the 1930s. That's good. Karl Schachter continues. Schenker believed that an aristocracy of some sort, at least in cultural matters, if not also in political structure, would promote the selection and support of gifted individuals among whom the rare genius might emerge.
Wow,
That he
what
was
a
altogether
terrible
wrong
thing
in
to...
this last view.
Doesn't China do that today? Like IQ test everyone as babies and stratify the population? I'm just asking. I'm not trying to make a clever point. I'm literally like that's something that happens, right?
I mean,
But-
it wasn't.
Turn
It
social
wasn't.
media into something to stratify the population is fucked enough.
I mean, well, I
the
was gonna say
man-
this also is like not very far off from what a lot of people believe today. That they believe that they're better than the unwashed masses of the rest of the country, and that they should be the people in charge of, taking culture and other things in the directions they see fit.
They're
It just
also
happens
not
to be that they
saying
have different
when he
opinions than
said
what this guy.
this. They're not saying when he said this.
Say that again, Jimmy. I'm sorry.
They're not saying when he said this. This guy was, how old at the turn of the century? The aristocracy was a big part of Europe. So what? So fucking what?
He also died in 30. He also died in 35, I think. So H word was coming around like right at the end of his life, right?
H word. That's funny. Yeah, I mean, but
I don't want to demonetize you, buddy. I think someone already said it though. So
I can't be monetized anyway. You got to have like 1,000 subscribers or something. So he was 30
Nice,
at
we'll
the
get it,
turn of the century, right? The aristocracy was huge. I mean, you could say World War I was a big reason, a big hit to the aristocracy. But I don't understand, like, why are we... It's just chronological snobbery again. It's just looking back on the past with the lens of today and not putting anything into context. It just irritates me.
Also, I feel like he's just using the word German as like an implicitly bad word. Like, oh, German, German, German. That's how you know they're bad. I honestly feel like that's part of what's going on here.
I also love the Super Mario 64 music. Oh, that starts creeping in.
That's what I mean.
Like, in Big Blue's Haunt, you go to the ghost, you get.
But wait, look at this
Nice.
quote. Look at this quote. What in it is so bad? Schenker believed that
One
an
more sec.
aristocracy of some sort, at least in cultural matters, if not also in political structure, would promote the selection and support of gifted individuals, among whom the rare genius might emerge. Why is that so bad? Like, that.
I guess the implication is that what he defined as genius was very limited. But at the same time, it's also, like I said, keep in mind that like most of the people, like most of the countries around that time, they were ethnostates of themselves. Like if that's like that kind of statement said today with his views, it's like, okay, living in a country that's like so multi-ethnic that obviously you see where all the obvious problems are. But it's like when Schenker said this, he lived basically in a German ethnostate. Asterisk for all the differences, but
yeah.
So it's not even like he was weeding out. It's not even like he was weeding out the great white men from the unwashed masses. He was, I guess, trying to weed out the best of the best of the best, which you could say is wrong. Which, if you want to say that's wrong in itself, argue that it's wrong in itself because it might be. I'm actually not taking an opinion. Like I don't really like giving an opinion on something if I don't know this quote or the time period. Like I'm just kind of thinking out loud with you guys and whatever. But just because you said what's so bad about that, it's like there are things bad about this, but there are also things that are not exact. You know what I mean? Like there might be more to this, or it might actually the context might actually matter. But I mean, I hate that we even talk about this because hypothetically, if Adam or anyone who was or Dr. Yule, anyone comes to see the stream, they would see a bunch of white guys talking about this quote, and the fact that we even discussed this quote and what might or might not be wrong with it is just even more proof of how deeply entrenched all the rot really is in all of our brains. Like you know what you see where I'm going with that, right? Like the
they
fact
don't know that
we
you're white.
Well, I mean, I
sound
think
white.
I said it in the last podcast.
Even if his skin is white, he ain't talking black. That's for sure. You don't have the actual culture. That's right. That's,
well, I mean,
that's the
I
new
also
turn,
it
right?
also could be very ambiguous as to everything else that I am, as long as it's not. Well, regardless, you get the point that I'm making. It doesn't matter that we're trying to have. It doesn't matter that we're trying to get behind this quote or in front of it and try to find anything else about it. The fact that we didn't just agree and like scoot by is problematic enough of itself, and it's confirmation bias for someone like Dr. Ewell, who was going to say that the rot of white supremacy and music theory runs so deep in us that we even entertain this quote. Like, you know what I mean?
It's always a lose-lose.
But that's the same answer for everything sometimes. So like at that point, I really don't even. Yeah, whatever. I'm also mostly anonymous on here, so fuck it.
Yeah. The reason I made the point I did about like him using German as a bad word, and like I feel like he's making it into a slur, because much of this video has been German names and German culture and these bad German people, and like I just think I feel like he's doing the thing that he's trying to teach you shouldn't do in the video.
That's all. But as
basically
we're all here on the IDW, we know that's
German
all they do.
racism. And I get like, yeah, Germany compared to other nations doesn't have the cleanest history. I mean, like the Holocaust is a pretty shocking example, right? But like, I'll just give something that
What
kind of
Holocaust?
helps.
I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
I have a friend who's Serbian. When he was a kid, he was actually in Serbia while they were being bombed by NATO, and he remembers like hiding like under his table and stuff when they were getting bombed. Okay, now he's actually often nervous about discussing his Serbian heritage and stuff because he knows that to a lot of people the word Serbian means killer. And like he was just a kid when that happened. He didn't do any of that shit, and he doesn't like the Serbian fascists that pulled the country in that direction for that time, right? But like he is like he lives in fear of the judgment and prejudice he could face because of what other Serbians did. And, you know, that sucks for him. Like, he doesn't deserve that. And, you know, I would say the same of, you know, German people who might have to encounter this. And I just don't appreciate how this guy is fanning those flames. It's like, why would you do that to anybody for their background?
Yeah, I don't know. Okay.
All right. Can we keep watching
Go ahead.
this here video?
I'm not prepared to say. Wait a second. Schachter agrees with Schenker. Are music theorists... Is music theory like a...
Our roots are white supremacist. We have created racist policies based on that simple racist idea that whites are superior.
Dr. Ewell is not the first person to suggest that ignoring Schenker's racist ideas is not an option. Leon Botstein would also say in his essay,
Schenker's notion of superior culture as an instrument for civilizing the rest of the world, when placed in the context of such forceful prejudices and contempt, demands scrutiny.
I have taught Schenkerian analysis.
Okay.
I know it.
Hold
very
on.
well.
But even
Always got
that
A's,
statement right
always
there,
liked it.
the notion itself demands scrutiny, not that music theory demands scrutiny.
Yeah.
Right? It's like,
of course,
I don't know. They so often get so close to like a good point, and then there's like a weird switch that happens. Unless
Also,
like I'm being.
it's literally just this one guy.
Yeah, you could pull quotes. You could pull quotes of crazies supporting crazies all over the place.
Of course, everyone in history deserves scrutiny. I guarantee you that we deserve scrutiny in 100 years. Everything we're saying in 100 years is going to deserve a whole lot of scrutiny. It's just the way
I had
it
a
is.
cheeseburger today. And those animal people in 50 years, I'm fucked. I admitting today I had a cheeseburger, and then, you know, us meat eaters, people who ate meat, we're the next on the chopping block. All our statues are coming down.
This is what I was trying to say about, like, you know, you're right. He was close to making a point that got me to think, yeah, that's something we should be thinking about. And then, no. You reminded me. When you start to talk about that stuff, you're actually trying to get me to dislike everything about my own culture or about some large idea, and I just back off from it. It's just irritating. I don't want to back off from it. There was a good point there. I don't want to back off from that.
That's a good point, Jimmy. Is that making a good point and then like shying away from it, or like hitting it from this like weird angle that wasn't even your original point in a way. It's like you did yourself a disservice. Like, and also it's like the quote. It's funny because like the quote, it's like you don't have to pull it back up, but the wording was like the They were talking about that notion. They weren't talking about music theory, like implicating music theory as a whole. They were talking about his quote and his worldview. It's like, so he had a culturally imperialist worldview. Guess what? Lots of fucking people throughout history had that view.
The whole world did
about,
at that
like,
time.
Basically, every other group. What'd you say?
The whole world did at that time. We had 2 world wars over that.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying every color against every other color has basically had that view, or people of the same color and different. You see where I'm going with that? You know what I mean? Like that's a flaw baked into our biology, which doesn't mean it's right and doesn't mean we keep it. It means that we're civilized people now who can choose which parts we want to discard. But
well,
I
find that highly contestable. But I won't. I won't
say that one more time, buddy.
I don't agree that we can just. I don't want to detract. This will become a whole nother discussion. That this will become.
No, but just tell me what we don't have to. But just tell me what thing I said that made you.
I don't think you ever like we're not post history. We're not at a point where we can choose to get rid of things that we think are wrong. I don't think that's true. I think that we.
Oh no. That's not what I meant to imply either. But I think I got you.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
All right.
No, it's okay. You're right. That's not what I meant. But what I meant is, as things progress, we make more and more informed decisions about how we want to proceed forward as a society.
Yeah,
doesn't mean
that
we're
I
post
agree with.
history. It just means that that's that part we're obviously. And I'm saying there's a reckoning that certain things, possibly imperialism, might have biological roots, which doesn't make them right. It just gives us a tool for understanding them.
That I totally agree with.
You know what I mean?
For me, it's tribalism. Tribalism is innate.
Tribalism might be a better word here to use than imperialism is like tribalism squared.
Yeah, exactly.
So tribalism, I think in general is a better word. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
Cool. Onward. Let's finish this. I'm getting hungry again. So
I'm getting hungry too, man.
All right.
Cool.
Why does it do that?
And I completely shoved it all under the carpet for my career. That was a bitter pill for me to swallow. Think of how hard it is for someone to swallow who's invested way more than I have, and there are many. The people who have devoted their careers, their energy, their toil to a field don't want to see it uprooted. They don't want to see their work undone. It's very difficult for that person to look into a mirror and say, race exists, whiteness exists, we've been rooted in pushing whiteness, and whiteness has had the leg up this whole time, and there have been other non-white groups who have been greatly disadvantaged.
Part 6 minor. No, really, music theory is really racist. I interviewed Dr. Yu.
I need
that part bothered me.
Yeah.
Wait,
same.
so he says race
Hold
exists.
on
I'm sure a lot of people that hit thumbs up on this video would say race is completely a social construct. You know what I mean? Like another one of these, like
I actually agree.
It's like of these moments that might be incongruous, but
I actually agree that race is entirely. I agree that race is an entirely.
I'm sorry, guys, I couldn't hear you.
I agree that race is an entirely socially constructed thing. It doesn't actually have it. It doesn't exist. It's not. Doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean that that it necessarily is bad. It's a useful term, but when we talk about race, it isn't the thing that makes race necessary to talk about. Is it's a construction around identifying people who are likely have different skin color or come from a different place in the planet, but it's not a real thing. There's no biological race, that's for sure, right?
I mean, I think you're opening up a pretty big door to.
There's no for sure. There's no for sure. It's just a question of where you draw the lines, where you're going to draw the distinctions.
That's what I'm gonna say. Like clearly, there's a like I don't know, like it's like clearly there are like different like genetic things that manifest. Like when people say that there's no like I'm sorry, who is this? Factfully, I'm very sorry to cut you off, but I think it's more about where you draw the lines. You know, and I'm sorry about that, but it was a new voice, and it was my fault. But I think that's a completely separate conversation. It's because it does seem a bit like it's a bit more about line drawing. Like like you can actually, I mean, why would 23andMe even work if there weren't something something in there that can actually like trace you back to a certain point? It's just what you're calling it and where you're drawing the lines.
That's not race though, because if it happened to be that my ancestors lived there and were white, it's not race. What 23andMe is detecting is where your lineage came from, but it's not race. Like race is what? Where
It's
does race?
genes.
Sure,
It's
but
basically-
I think races will have different
It's matching.
concentrations of
It's
different
matching
alleles.
genes to geographies, basically.
Like I think what they're saying is
And
there's no
at a certain point in time.
there's no white gene or there's no white allele and there's no official black allele. But like certain groups will have certain alleles in higher concentrations than other groups. There's a reason that that white people have to use sunscreen and that very dark-skinned people that live in Scandinavia have to supplement with vitamin D.
Okay,
Like,
let
there are
me
reasons
put it this
for
way:
that.
if
I
we
mean,
didn't have
completely, like I said, I
if
don't
we
really
didn't
care.
have eyes and we couldn't detect skin color, would we need a term called race, or would we just say that's the tribe from another place? Race is a thing we constructed to group people based on biological characteristics, but that breaks down. It's not something. It doesn't actually exist.
Oh, sure.
in the
I would never
world.
say it's exact.
You
I would
could
never
say the same about species, though, right? You could say,
No,
like,
no,
do
no,
we
no, you
really
cannot
need
say-
to know that
you
they're
cannot
species,
say that
right?
about
We're
species.
blind. There's like an Indian elephant, an African one. I mean, we just created those. So they're social constructs.
No.
Say
You
the same
can't. You
thing.
cannot say that about species because they're genetically different. But
Well,
race
so
is.
humans.
What do you mean?
So humans. So human groups.
No, they're
Exactly
not.
what I said.
No.
So humans are so human groups. They're genetically distinct.
No, they're not. That's what I'm saying. They're not
Yes,
genetically.
they. No. They really are.
I really think you guys have to. We have to put a bookmark here also to get out of control, and we should make a separate podcast about this.
Well,
Could I just make
Go ahead.
one point in closing, which is around it, like not about the subject, but is it not the case that just the word racism, the word race has kind of been ousted from the kind of biological lexicon just because it has so much baggage? And so we talk about ethnicities or populations, and that's kind of why the term disappeared. But the notion that there's no basis in biology and that all humans are just like homogenous regardless of.
No, that's not what I
their,
said, though. That's that's not what I'm saying.
No, I'm not.
There's
I'm not
phenotypical
I'm not
and
saying that you're saying that. I'm specifically saying I'm not arguing against you. I'm just saying, like, I think that's why we got rid of the term, and many of these terms are socially constructed. But
There's
yeah,
no-
you talk more now about like population groups and
Yeah, like,
so
would you be
forth.
more
But
comfortable by
sorry,
There's no genotype
Like
difference
population
between
differences?
any human being. There's no genotype difference. There's phenotypical differences. They're not the same. There are no genotypical.
There are on average differences in the frequency of alleles between populations. Like that's a difference. That's how you
Yeah,
can
but-
distinguish populations in the first place.
Yeah, but that's not because
But
of
in any
race.
case-
That's not. That's
What?
That's not because of race.
Well, it's not because of race. I think what I was saying is that the people who eventually started classifying people into races were probably vaguely getting at those allele concentrations.
Okay. Yeah,
Something like
Jimmy, you do know, right, that basically if you are not part of the ex-African diaspora, which occurred with the emergence of Homo sapiens, a group of about 30,000, right? No one who basically remained within Africa has any Neanderthal DNA, but everyone else does. That's a genetic difference, obviously. You just can't deny it.
And Denisovan DNA and Asians as well, right?
Right,
So,
sorry, yeah, that's it.
Europeans have Neanderthal, and I think Asians have both Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA. Is that correct, or am I misremembering?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but I'm just maybe the second thing is useful to say. Very often, when you look at someone, a lot of people think that they can tell someone's race by looking at them, and they'll look at someone who is maybe from the Indus Valley, and they'll go, "Oh, that's a black guy," and it's like, no, that's a South Asian person, and you can't. Yeah, that's definitely socially constructed. I would agree with you there. But yeah, there are genetic differences, obviously.
We'll have to put a pin in it and discuss later.
Can we,
'cause I
can we
don't,
agree to put a bookmark there?
Yeah,
And
I
then-
don't. I don't agree
Yeah,
the
happy to.
differences are any
Sorry to
more
do it.
significant than hair color or predisposition to a disease. Those are the only, but those are phenotypical.
Okay. Well, I mean, lots to say, but
Yeah,
bookmark.
sorry.
Sure.
You can have the final word. I'm being a butt about
My final word is sorry for derailing.
No, you're good. You're good. Thanks for participating. Seriously, sorry that my reaction was severe.
And smash
Yeah, likewise. So.
And sorry for maybe jumping in to play mediator when it wasn't my job. I was just trying to help people. Sorry.
No, you're good. I get really heated on that.
I hope I was cordial to both of you. I want everyone to be smiling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool, man. Thanks, guys.
Cool. All right.
All right, let's finish this video.
We are on the final part, right? No.
Back in early July, and since that interview took place, there has been some, shall we say, music theory that has happened. After his speech at SMT, the Journal of Schenkerian Studies at the University of North Texas published 15 papers in a symposium response that Dr. Ewell was not invited to participate in. Now, some of these papers were half-assed, to say the least. One was just a short paragraph, and one was somehow published anonymously, which is strange because, you know, just ask any teacher if that's enough to get a passing grade on an assignment. You're going to need to write your name on it, and you're going to need to probably write more than one paragraph. Probably the
This bothered me a bit.
If you
because
don't
it's
want
like-
anonymous
because
responses,
it's like,
don't-
why do you think the person wrote anonymously? And what does that really say about who has the power in the field?
Yeah. If you
Is
don't
it
want
quote-unquote
anonymous-
white supremacists and the white supremacist adjacent people, or is it the people like Dr. Ewell making easy claims like that?
Yes. If you don't want anonymous responses, you can't accuse people of being racist for disagreeing with you. Like, we talked about this earlier, but in my opinion, the worst thing to be called is a rapist, if it's true. Like, if to be labeled a rapist is the worst thing. The next is racist.
What about murderer? Can I be there at the top?
I don't think it's. I don't think that. I think that.
Surely pedophile is like
That's
up
true.
there. It's
Pedophile's
gotta be
up
in the
there.
top 3.
Let's just agree that you're placing races among these very bad things.
Yeah. It's on the top shelf. For sure.
It's on the top shelf. That's a good one. Top shelf liquor.
If you want to destroy someone's life, get them labeled a racist, a rapist, a pedophile, or something like that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also hated that little quip there about, shall we say, music theory. You know, once again,
Like what the hell, man?
equating music theory with white supremacy. It's just like, it's pathetic to me. All right.
worst
It's
offender
just
in
cheap.
laziness, though, comes
Yeah.
from a professor at the University of North Texas named Timothy Jackson, who quotes at length from the Wikipedia article on misogyny in rap music for some reason. I guess because Dr. Ewell isn't white. Accuses Dr. Ewell of black anti-Semitism and also of not bringing blacks up to standard, and also patronizingly dismisses the work of black musicians.
We can listen to their music with pleasure even if they aren't the supreme geniuses on the level of the greatest classical composers.
It's mostly an unhinged racist tirade, but more importantly, this guy quoted from Wikipedia, like at length. I don't even do that, and I make YouTube videos. Seriously, check the sources in the link in the description. There are a lot of them, and none of them are Wikipedia. Like, not to belabor this point, but can you
two
imagine
tiny things here
citing-
right before we finish the video. The two tiny things are one of them is I think there were these two other guys who did a stream about this video, and they had something good about, like, one of those other guys had actually read Jackson's responses here and had gone more in depth into. I can't say anything about it because I haven't. But but like at this point, it's kind of like what Joe said. It's like, Adam, all you did was show this guy. You made a jab at about a poor citation, and then called it an unhinged racist tirade. And it's like, you can't blame us for, like, I'm very sorry. I trust Adam and I like his videos, but it's like my first instinct when I hear that, my first instinct, just based off all the stuff that's been happening for the past couple of years, is it probably wasn't an unhinged racist tirade.
Yep.
Like, Cody, are you there still, or is your camera
Yeah.
off? Yeah,
my
you.
camera's off, batteries died.
No, I gotcha. But Cody, I know, would agree with that, and I know Joe at some level probably agrees with that too. Kevin, if he were here, would probably agree with that. Like, it's really unfortunate that, like, you can say in such damning terms, there's something that should really hold weight, and it's starting to lose weight. I don't know.
Yeah, that's their fault.
Yeah, I
Well,
assume
it is.
I
It is their
assume
fault.
anybody publicly called a racist is not racist. Like, the amount of evidence I need to even consider it is so overwhelming that, like, I feel like at this point I risk being okay with actual racists. And I don't mean for that to happen,
Disavow. No, I'm kidding.
I don't mean for that to happen. I'm just saying, like, probably if in the gray area where it's not sure, I'm probably leaning towards letting it go. And I don't like that. I don't like it at all.
I don't like it either, and that's exactly what I'm getting at. Is that, if you're getting to the level of you should be able to call something an unhinged racist tirade, like, you better mean it, man. And I'm really sorry, but after all the stuff that's been happening in academy and in media and pop culture, you could even say over the past couple of years, you've made it extremely hard for me to take a very serious statement like that at face value, and that's really detrimental. That's it's not doing anyone a good service, I think.
Is this discussion an unhinged racist tirade? Because I feel like we some of the points he brought up are things that we have brought up, maybe not in the same words, but I think some of the points that he quoted are okay to make.
Are you referring to some of the Shanker's quotes?
No, the quotes from the paper that from one of the papers that he that was written against Dr. Ewell.
Oh. And what was your question, Jimmy? I'm sorry.
No,
Adam's video is an unhinged racist tirade, or
yeah, is our discussion an unhinged racist tirade? Because I feel like we've made similar.
I mean,
Oh no!
Because
it's
we're even
a racist tirade, but I don't think it's unhinged, as far as I can tell.
God damn it!
A racist tirade that's grounded in reality or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
Disavow.
yeah, it doesn't seem unhinged.
Disavow.
I mean, you're racist, but I don't want to call you crazy racist. That would be rude.
You're like my grandpa, kind of racist.
I did wake up feeling a little extra racist today. Guys, you can't keep blurring the line between parody and reality, because now I have no.
Yeah. I really think you make a good point. It seems like the same thing has happened to feminism. There's so many overclaims about like this was misogynistic, and you know, it kind of just inures you to like noticing like, oh, when something actually is sexist or misogynistic, because it's just like it's thrown around so very much, it's kind of lost all meaning. The kind of boundaries are blurred, like. And yeah, that does a disservice to the people who are supposed to be protected by the use of the term. And I almost get to that level of antipathy, like when I hear the word, like, you know, this was blatant sexism. My stance should be like, oh really, what happened? And instead it's like, really, am I going to find out again? It's just like all just completely synthesized, and that.
Am I going to find out it was a compliment on a haircut?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I know
and I'm not going to invest any more energy into this anymore. I can't do it. I'm tired. I'm tired of it.
Yeah.
And that also, a lot of that also goes with the whole thing of last time I said, is a lot of these things they're full to the brim of either Kafka traps or just completely unfalsifiable hypotheses, like the Kafka trap.
Yes.
You know, it's we need the feminism because of X, Y, Z. I don't think this particular incident was representative of, oh well, the fact that you're actually derailing and putting this aside just shows exactly how much we still need it, and and so on and so forth, and that nothing is actual I mean, Adam kind of dismissively says here that like we should hold him to the same standard as a high school student, and it's like a lot of these people who are being brought onto the news to be the spokesperson of what have you, CRT or feminism or this and that. It's like we should hold them to the standard that other actual like people are held to. If you can't put forth a hypothesis that's unfalsifiable, because then where do we go from there?
Also,
we don't.
They're referencing Wikipedia thing. It's like, yeah, probably don't do that. However, that is not a rebuttal of the claim. You could have looked at what they said and said, this is well cited on Wikipedia, and here's where they actually got it from, or not. Or you could have said,
isn't that also like Essays 101? Like, go to Wikipedia and then go to the sources on the Wikipedia and then check that source.
Right. when Adam Neely was like, "Hey,
is that invalid?"
Say again.
If I find Isaac Newton's equations on Wikipedia, is that invalid?
Yeah.
Well,
right.
If you could trace them back to a source called Isaac Newton, then yeah, you're getting somewhere. If that what do you say his name was, Newton? If he doesn't exist, then yeah, that page is bullshit.
If we find out that Isaac Newton was anti-Semitic, well, we all start floating away.
Well,
does gravity stop working?
All that's saying that all that pointing out that they cited Wikipedia is that this person is likely not an academic, and that they don't have good academic rigor. And that's fine. Okay, but now address the claims.
Academic, though, which is why I think the claim is he's trying to make that claim, because it is an academic doing that.
It's a cheap dig, right? To say like, roll your eyes and go, oh, Wikipedia. It's like, yeah, you should, exactly as you said, like, well, look at the argument, look at the source, and you're kind of demeaning yourself by saying, well, I'm just not going to engage with something that appears on Wikipedia, precisely per the argument, like, yeah, like surely You know, there are plenty of facts on Wikipedia and well-referenced facts too. So, just
All right.
yeah, I think it's not engaging in an argument in good faith. Put it that way.
Sure. And like I said, I would love, like, I hesitate to say more about this because it sounds like Jackson actually wrote a response, and I haven't read it, so I don't want to say more about it.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's keep going.
Wikipedia in a term paper or a thesis or dissertation. Like, does your teacher let you do that? Like, no, you don't. You don't do that, dude. Why the hell would we take you seriously? People were pissed and signed a letter that Timothy Jackson should probably be held to the same level of academic competence that high schoolers are, and also maybe not be such a racist douchebag personally to Dr. Ewell. And for some reason, Fox News decided that this would be part of the culture war now, as well as the National Review, who described Timothy Jackson's paper as
serious critique of that scholar's work, based on archival research within his highly specialized field, and after lifelong study of Schenker specifically, and music theory more generally.
Again, Wikipedia. The very first thing that you see when you type in, is Wikipedia a reliable source, is Wikipedia telling you that it is not a reliable source.
Again, that like I want to read the actual paper because it sounds like he said a whole bunch of other stuff, and then they find like the shitty citation and just throw the entire paper under the bus and say we don't have to engage with this.
What does he have his PhD in? What does Ewell have his PhD in?
I don't know. You go Google him right now. It's probably like ethnomusicology or something.
Oh yeah, don't look at his Wikipedia page though, because then we'll suffer.
Oh shit! Then he's gonna lose. He's gonna lose his doctorate if I go on Wikipedia.
Oh where? Yeah. Don't click on that.
Oh my god! I'm going.
Oh my
What if you
god!
get a PhD in Wikipedia studies.
The myth of race and gender neutrality in music theory. So this dude is a critical theorist in music theory. So he uses critical theory in music theory. So basically, he's part of the virus.
Wait, what did you say? What this guy's doctorate did?
Music theory.
Oh,
Wait.
okay.
Hold on.
He has a degree in something, right, or a PhD?
He has. It can't be. I hope it's not in theory.
Doctor has spoken.
I hope it's not. Oh, please don't tell me it's in theory.
And you are a racist.
Fuck.
Wow.
He received his BA in music from Stanford University, his MA cello performance at Queens College. So where's his PhD?
And is he not a doctor?
Before embarking on doctoral studies at Yale University in music theory. So there you go.
So really all he's educated in is music, really.
Is it like
Music and music theory.
So
where's the critical theory specialization come in?
No, I'm making.
Is that just like a proxy for I make complaints?
I think it's part of his general shtick of like his thesis, and like they showed clips of him at the National Society of Music Theory, like making his points there, and then he shows up here. So
yeah, I mean the fact that he went to university for 8 years is pretty. That's all you need. You get all the critical race theory there.
I will read to you.
You just get it. You just get it in the lunch queue.
Yeah, you just.
Yeah.
I will read to you his peer-reviewed published journal entries. Re-examining the 1930 conference on Boleslav Yavarsky, Ledovy rhythm and the early politics of Soviet music theory. So that one seems okay. Harmonic functionalism in Russian music theory, a primer. Music theory and the white racial frame. Music theory a la Leningrad. What?
Can you link us to that?
Yeah. They're listed on...
The funny thing about that is that it makes critical theory seem like nothing if you don't need any qualification in it whatsoever, and you can, publish influential papers or speak at conferences with zero time apparently spent engaged in studying or learning the subject. It kind of makes it seem pretty ass-ass.
I have a favor to ask. Can you stop having like Alan Watts?
No. I was born like this. Seriously, it It freaked my nursery teacher out, and she also said thing. Same answer every time.
Born
no. Just the way it is.
Your nursery teacher out.
I just sent a
That's born
link
like
to
this,
music
yeah.
theory and the white
That's
racial
what
frame.
born like this means.
Yeah, I just found the paper online too.
Music theory is
I just
white,
scrolled down to the
according to
bottom and
this.
I
See, this is
Keywords
what I'm fucking
race.
talking. So actually, I'm gonna bring this up in Cynical Theories on
It says
Friday.
critical race studies right there.
Yes.
Keywords critical race studies.
I'm gonna bring this up.
Holy shit.
In
I just scrolled down to. Sorry, I just scrolled down to the first sentence is music theory is white.
Yep.
And then the last section is this our hashtag music theory so white moment? I certainly hope so. I also hope that I certainly hope that we in music theory can show the fortitude necessary to face these inconvenient truths and change music theory for the better. But as we discussed, as we're talking about this video, it's like, what does the Dr. Newell textbook look like? And it's like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not exactly sure what he wants. Like, I know his thesis, I think, but I'm not sure what he wants besides like put different voices in the textbook.
That
like,
seems.
He has recommendations.
That seems.
Say again.
That's it. That seems pretty common to like critical theory, right? It's full of like tear this down, but it's really short on this is what would be better.
Oh, this
we
guy
would
is
prefer. Here's what we're gonna make.
This guy is a problem. This guy is a problem. He has recommendations. No, I'm serious. Like enemy. He's an enemy. That's how I see it. I can't help it. I'm not gonna shy away from it anymore. Right. But he has recommendations in his in his paper, in this fucking music theory is white thing. One of them is rename SMT's, I'm guessing that's the name of the school, Committee on Race and Ethnicity to the Committee on Anti-Racism. Like, that fucking makes a difference. I mean, you put your cards on the table. I now know. Convene an anti-racist music theory conference, or convene such a session at a music theory conference. Invite an anti-racist speaker. Here's my favorite one. Offer a new award for anti-racist music theory scholarship or for critical race theory scholarship, like the new award in the American Musicology Society. Fuck off. Like,
I wonder how much
Jimmy,
money.
The SMT, right, is just the Society of Music Theory. He wants that renamed to the anti. Did I miss that?
No.
I think there was a department within the SMT that he wanted to
called,
rename.
It's called Committee.
Yeah, could you fucking imagine?
Yeah.
No, it was just that. Yeah, it should no longer be called the U.S. government. It should be called the anti-racism government.
No.
What?
What it was is he wants to rename the SMT's Committee on Race and Ethnicity to the Committee on Anti-Racism. And to me, anti-racism is a word that like triggers me. It triggers me.
Sure.
But surely, like the music Society of Music Theory and Ethnicity would be dealing with things like understanding like different forms of music or different kind of like styles of rhythm within different traditions, right? And that's not a anti-racism, right? That's kind of like being, I don't know, like an art school and saying,
like
we're just going to like look at it. Yeah, right. It's like being an art school and saying that we're going to be the anti-pop art school because we're going to be looking at impressionists. So it's got to be anti, something. Just like it. Well,
I agree.
Could we try to finish the video up?
Yes.
We're getting close to the end.
Yeah. Just because I know we're getting close, and
and
also because you said you're going to bring some of this back up for the Cynical Theories book club. So if you do, Jimmy, could you please do us all a lovely favor and those sources that you found about which you were speaking, could you put those in the chat so we can see them for next time? Should we do that?
I put that one in there. If I look at any more, I will do that.
In which one? In the general or in the?
Yeah, the general voice one. I can put it in the IDW CleanRoom one though.
Oh, general one type. Yeah, if you could put it in CleanRoom, that'd be tremendous. But otherwise, don't worry.
Cool. I will. You know what? I'll wait and I'll put a thing in there later. General one text.
Later, cool. Let's finish it up.
Alrighty. Okay.
Oh no, Cody had to go too.
Killing it.
I heard the quote where blacks have to, you got to raise blacks up to standard so they can compete, which I'm like, oh my God. You couldn't even say that in like 1970.
So the unfortunate side effect of the cartoonish levels of racism coming out of the University of North Texas this month is that this whole thing has turned into a referendum on Heinrich Schenker, who, one, you probably just heard of today, and two, was just some racist anti-Semitic guy living in Europe at the turn of the 20th century, and let's be honest, he was not unique in that regard. The fact that Fox News desperately wants to turn this into cancel culture run amok is just, it's just stupid.
Phil wants to quote-unquote cancel Schenker. I don't, never said it, kind of said exactly the opposite at the end of my long article. Phil wants us to throw away Schubert and never play Schubert anymore. Nope, never said it, wouldn't say it. Schubert was a very interesting composer. I like quite a bit of his music. It's not about canceling anybody. It's about addressing difficult issues directly, forthrightly. We're going to talk about it openly. We're going to talk about white supremacy, the roots in white supremacy. I mean, that's a statement of fact. It's not under question.
Yeah.
Music theory is historically rooted in white supremacy. The music
Okay,
that is deeply
no.
under
music
question.
Music theory is historically rooted in many traditions, and some of those people along the way happen to have been racial supremacists.
Yeah, that is.
Yes. You know, music theory, and it's all, he says that's a statement of fact. Like he keeps doing this. He's done this several times throughout the video, and I know the video is about to end, and I want to finish too because I have to go as well. But it's like how convenient that nothing can ever they don't talk about the overtone series. They don't talk about physics. They don't talk about for someone he obviously has experience with the Western canon. But he doesn't talk about the physics behind it. He talks nothing about the objectivity of what might be true and what are the reasons some things might sound like they sound. But then when we talk about, you know, all the things that would have to like the stars that have to align to make his claim true, that's objective fact. That's fact, Adam.
Yeah.
He says it every single time.
If that
it's undeniable.
If that is,
you know what I mean?
If this makes music theory racist and that's a fact, then biology is also racist. Evolutionary theory is racist. A lot of science.
Any field that's developed over the past X hundred years will have had piece of shit people along the way.
Sorry, not racist, but based in white supremacy. I know, but what'd you say? I said he didn't say they're racist. He said they're based in, their foundation is in white supremacy.
That's what I'm saying. But it's like if someone. But I mean, it's also like there are deeper questions that go beyond that besides who was a piece of shit and who wasn't. Because like I said, it was totally tongue-in-cheek, obviously. But if we found a journal that's hiding under Newton's floorboards from his childhood home, and we find out that he was racist as fuck, then does calculus stop working? Do we float away from the gravity? Like, no, there are deeper truths underneath that have to be addressed and will stay true or untrue whether or not we address them.
That's just
and I think that
inner colonizer. That's just your inner colonizer speaking.
It's not inner. After this video, it's outer. Okay. No, I'm joking. Disavow. I'm totally joking. But...
All right, let's finish it up.
Okay, let's finish up.
Theorists said it themselves in the 19th century, quite openly. It wasn't a secret. It only became a secret when white supremacy became untenable in the mid-20th century. You couldn't be white supremacist anymore. It had to go underground.
Part 7 diminished.
Wait. No. White supremacy went away, became a problem. And so we no longer identify that part of the people that we're talking about. That is not something to be remembered or to be... I guess you could remember it and think about it. Sure, that's interesting. But it has nothing to do with music theory. To include that, what it says is, because white supremacy is now disgusting, any beliefs about racial superiority no longer belong in music theory. That's what that is. It's not,
which seems pretty reasonable. Seems pretty reasonable to me to take racial supremacist beliefs out of music theory.
Right, but
it's kind of like what Joe said before.
It didn't go into being secret. That's not what happened.
Yeah. It's kind of like what Joe what you said before in terms of like you think this guy's more interested because want to know why? Because Kevin and I we were talking a lot about different systems of tuning even within Western music, and we talked really in depth about what kind of keys serve what kind of purposes and the dances that go with them and the tuning. And then what you said is I sound like you said something like it sounds like I'm listening to people that actually care about music theory. This guy sounds like he really cares about the story. And then you went into Euclid, how he was walking on the beach with his cane, and he would drag the cane, he would poke, drag, and then he turned around, and then he saw points and lines. and then Euclidean geometry was born, or at least that was the catalyst. And it's like you said something like, it sounds like this guy, Dr. Ewell, is far more interested in the story of what was the color of that person holding that cane, and how does that come out in their music. Like, you know what I mean? That's what I meant in terms of like, at a certain point, it's like, how much of this is talking about music theory? Part of this is we did this. One of the best points was from the first video. It's like when Dr. Newell talks about like, I asked like, what would a Dr. Newell, what would a Dr. Ewell textbook look like? Because at one point he says like, he says we'll encounter Beethoven, we'll encounter Bach on page 145, and then we can relate that back to the Indian Rag that we talked about in chapter 2. And it's like we established last time, like people come into music school already speaking the language to some degree or another. They might be really good at it, or they might be vaguely familiar with it, but they already come in speaking the language of the music that's around them. And the music that's around them, for the most part, is derived from the Western tradition. So it makes complete sense to teach from there up. And then from there, and then like the math analogy, you have to start with the easiest parts of how they used to teach the Western tradition to get into the more complex parts about the American tradition. And coming with that, all the things that come with the most complex parts of the American tradition are the voices he's dying to include, the non-white voices and the women, and it's amazing. It's an amazing historical picture all coming together. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You made far too much sense there.
Me?
Is the idea that some other form of music theory, which could be kind of let's say denominated as coming from some other population, is not taught as a foundational kind of principle? Is that what's seen as exclusionary here? I'm still missing the how teaching music theory could be racist, unless it is that it's like, well, we're not teaching another culture's potential theory as the kind of foundations of what we begin with.
Exactly, but it's like a lot of this he talks about from the ground up building. He says something like, a very consistent, globally aware, culturally aware, like picture of global music theory. And it's like all that stuff is really important, and I think we should really learn that. But it's like, you have to pick a starting spot. And if you're going to pick, it's like taking college English. And on the first day of college English, they say we wouldn't want to prioritize English over anything. So we're actually going to dive right into Spanish and Chinese a little bit.
Right.
And once we do that, and then eventually, we are going to get to Chaucer, and then we'll relate Chaucer back to the Chinese text that we read in chapter 2. It's like you see that there's something is like anachronistic here. Pardon me, but like, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, we're about to finish the video, so we can let it. But I say this, like I hold Jimmy's getting a little heated, and I internally get heated, but I hold no ill will. I love Adam's videos, and I hold no ill will toward Dr. Ewell. But so much of this stuff is just like the same stuff we've been hearing about every single field for the past 10 years at least. And then it's boy who cried wolf at a certain point, and it really sucks because when you make a really good point, and all of us as decent people want to agree with the good point, when you instead say cartoonish levels of racism, referring to a guy's paper as a response, I haven't read the paper, and I'm very sorry to inform you that I'm gonna hold off on agreeing with you on that judgment until I read the paper myself. And it really sucks. I think you've done a disservice to people who really care.
Whereas like 15 years ago, maybe I would have been like, oh yeah, that's probably racist. I guess I'm pretty confident if I do read it, there's going to be cartoonishly racist. Whereas now I'm like, yeah, you overact that. It's very unlikely anything.
Yeah. What was your name, sir? By the way, we're about to finish the video, but what's your name?
Me.
What was it?
His name is Faculty. Factfully.
Yeah, you can call me that. No worries.
Oh, okay. I'll call you Fax with an X.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, that's cool.
I'm joking.
No, it
All right,
works.
let's go.
It's all good.
All right.
Coda. So where do we begin here? Well, the first step is in acknowledging that music theory is profoundly Eurocentric and white racially framed, and we already kind of have done that. In the beginning of this video, I asked you to replace the phrase music theory in popular media with the harmonic style of 18th century European musicians, and hopefully that got your wheels turning a little bit. Now, sometimes people genuinely are not referring to that style when they say music theory, but more often than not, They actually are. There's
No, they're
nothing
not.
wrong with the
That's what we
harmonic
said.
style of 18th century European musicians. I like the music of Bach. It's a big part of me. That does not mean that it has to be the default. The music theory of Heinrich Schenker also might be very useful in understanding the music of Bach and Mozart and Beethoven. And honestly, the musical notation looks freaking sweet. But that doesn't mean that his worldview has to be the default. And in fact, let's not adopt any of his worldview, please. So this video is already way too long, but I do want to mention a couple of things that have been glaringly omitted from the script so far. The first thing, of course, is the relationship of music theory to class. It costs money to go to music school, and not everybody has the ability to go to music school, the place where you learn this harmonic style of 18th century European musicians, and so knowledge of music theory can be kind of a class signifier. In the United States, anyway, the relationship between class and race is very clear, so this white racial frame of music theory affects class as well. Now, you might notice also that I've been talking about the United States primarily in this video, which is rather ironic in a video about the Eurocentrism of music theory, but I can only personally speak to my experience. And in my experience, I did not learn the music of Beethoven through the lens of Barry Harris and George Russell, people of color. Instead, I learned figured bass, which is all a system designed to teach Schenkerian analysis, which was a theory explicitly designed to teach German cultural
That's
supremacy.
the cart before the horse,
I didn't
though.
learn the basics
Figured
of
bass
Ottoman or
wasn't
North
designed
Indian.
to teach Schenkerian analysis. Figured bass was being developed for hundreds of years. I don't want to say hundreds, but it was being developed for a long time before Schenker was even born.
Yeah, we're so close.
I know. I'm sorry. But as we're finishing, Lester in the chat said Ewell's blog is also crazy. If before we finish, could you post that in the chat,
Yeah,
Lester?
Yeah, I have it. It's.
Oh, if you have it, could you post it then? And
Yeah,
then we'll let the video finish.
his website is philipewell.com.
Okay, gotcha.
His blog, here's this, I'll read this real quick. The myth of race and gender neutrality in music theory. Race, gender, and their intersection in music theory. Music theory's quantitative and qualitative whiteness. Beethoven was an above average composer. Let's leave it at that. New music theory. Music theory's future. I love the above average composer thing. Yeah, you can fuck right off, my friend.
You said it's just philipewell.com?
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna put it in the chat. Okay, let's finish up. I think that is the end of the video.
Okay.
Or Japanese or African music theory as a foil to Western theory, and I certainly did not learn how to dance in music school. I don't imagine my teachers were explicitly white supremacist in their view of music theory. Well, most of them anyway, but that doesn't mean that the system itself that they had to work with wasn't structurally biased towards the harmonic style of 18th century European musicians. And that's what makes racism structural. Sorry to bring in the critical race theory, by the way. I know if you're watching this now, you might be on some kind of future blacklist for anti-American activities, but here we are, everybody. Institutional racism is a bitch, and
I just want to say, I didn't have a problem with critical race theory until people like Adam Neely were using it in the way they're using it.
Nice. I think he's about to say the last sentence. Let's do it. I believe.
Here is me eating Fritos.
Oh, we did it.
We did it. Good job, everybody.
I want to make an observation because this is one of the last points he made, and it was the one about how there's like people who study music theory. Often people who have the resources and money to study it, right? So it's a class thing, and in the United States, class often correlates with race.
So Indians and Asians are the ultimate music theorists.
Right. So it's like, well, the point I'm trying to make is,
and I'm joking. Go ahead.
I think like probably more so than most other people in this server, like I have a very class-sensitive mentality myself. Like Jimmy's kind of aware of this. I think some of the other guys in the conversation right now are a little bit newer and don't know my politics as well as Jimmy does. But like I'm like an old school like Rooseveltian progressive kind of person. So I'm all about helping poor and working people, right?
Like from a materialist perspective.
From a material, like you mean like improving their standard of living?
Sure, let's go with that.
Yes, stuff like that. Just improving their quality of life, all that shit. Giving them, enfranchising them in the system and so on and so forth, right? You know, I'm aware of all the things that come with class and what's associated with class. Race rather often is a thing, you know. Most of the people who are working at Burger King or McDonald's, they're not usually white. They're usually like black or Hispanic. I've noticed, at least in my neck of the woods. So I can talk about all these things where class keeps people out of these things. Where being in a higher class gives you the gateway to all these things, so on and so forth. Okay, like I get that, but the observation, like he takes what is a profound observation like that and makes it trivially true. Like people who know things because they have the resources to know things. Well, no fucking shit. Like I have better nutrition as a child than people who lived 500 years ago. That's improved the development of my brain, at least marginally. I know more shit, if only because of that. And I have like books in school, so it's like, yeah, even when you're on the lower end of the class spectrum these days, like, you know, there are differences with things like that in the past, and I get it. But like, that doesn't actually present a problem for what we might say like the epistemological relevance behind theory itself. You know, whether we're talking about music theory or other things, like as far as like, it's not been a universal hobby for people, like, you know, maybe playing tag is. That doesn't mean like it's full of shit. Like people started taking the time to analyze this stuff, to analyze music and develop theory about it. And for a long time, perhaps even still into this day, but most people who can actually do that are the people who've had the means to do so. But they don't have to worry about other things. And if you're a fucking factory worker, you didn't get to think about that shit, right? Okay. But that, like, everybody already knows that. Adam Neely, like, he didn't say anything that anybody watching this video didn't already know. He took something that, you know, he took something like that's an important piece